Hello, trainers, and welcome to episode 4 of Soundproof, and this is our Worlds episode. It's coming up in just a couple days, and we've got all sorts of World content for you here in this episode of our podcast. Again, my name is Brendan Lewis. I go by Mr. BDog46 on online forums, and I am joined by my buddy Jake Muller, who of course goes by Major Bowman. You should know us both by now. We're back here for our 4th episode, and we're just going strong, and we are super excited to bring some Worlds content to you guys.
Yeah, Worlds is the biggest tournament of the year. Unfortunately, neither of us will be competing, so it's a little bit less important than in years past, but it's still pretty big. It's still something that a lot of people look forward to every year, and it's still a super fun event.
Yeah, and actually, there's the chance that neither of us are even going this year, which is bizarre. I'm still hoping to sneak down there, but
I will
work
be
is
busy.
conspiring against me.
Yeah, work is conspiring against you. My mouth is conspiring against me.
You're having a very serious surgery.
A very serious surgery. I'm going to get 2 teeth dumber, as a couple of my wisdom teeth are coming out on the Thursday that this will be released.
Teeth dumber. I was like, did you mean to say that?
Oh, I did. I absolutely did.
I've never heard that before. That's really funny. I'm going to steal that.
Go for it.
100%. So yeah, anyway, this is the Worlds episode, and of course, we are recording here on a Tuesday night, and this will probably drop on a Wednesday, which means that Worlds is in 2 days. Thursday. Worlds is in 1 day. Worlds is tomorrow. People are already assembling in Washington, D.C. People are finalizing their last-minute team choices. This, that, and the other thing. And of course, Worlds is being held in Washington, D.C. this year, where it has been before. It is making a return trip to the capital of the United States of America. And of course, the dates of Worlds do run from Friday, August 16th to Sunday, August 18th. And of course, the World Finals being the only matches that will take place on Sunday, with Day 1 Swiss being on the 16th of August, Day 2 Swiss being on the 17th of August, and then cutting all the way to the finals, which again will take place on Sunday. And this event will take place in, like I said, Washington, D.C. at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. But of course, if you're going to Worlds, you already know that. And if you're not going to Worlds, you don't care. You're just looking for the stream. And of course, the stream information is all over the internet, but it will be taking place at twitch.tv/Pokemon for part of the weekend, and for the other part of the weekend at twitch.tv/PokemonVG. So if you're not going to be in Washington, those are the places that you're going to want to be this weekend to catch all of the World's action. And of course, TPCI runs, I think, a really great stream, and I'm looking forward to seeing all that action if I can't end up making it, which it's looking like I'm not going to.
Yeah, me and my painkillers and my smoothies will be chilling on my couch watching the stream, and so if you guys need someone to talk to during the streams on either Friday or Saturday, I will have nothing to do and not really nowhere to go. So I would love a friend, I'd love some company.
Maybe you won't even remember watching Worlds at all.
I probably won't, if I'm being honest. I won't remember anything for like 4 or 5 days, but probably for the best.
Been there. It was fun. But anyway, that is kind of just the logistic piece of what Worlds is happening for Worlds this year, 2019. And of course, we are in the Ultra portion of our restricted or our GS Cup format. So it'll be kind of mirroring a lot of the elements of Worlds that happened in 2016. And we're going to take you through a little bit of what's going on in what is kind of like a metagame that seems to be developing all over the place because of the lack of events that take place over the summer going into Worlds. So like we've talked about a little bit, this is a part of the season when the ladder might hold even a little bit more weight than it usually does as far as metagame development, because there's not really a whole lot else going on. So we'll definitely, like usual, touch on our ladder's greatest hits, and then we will go through our Worlds content, which we'll take a look at some of the participants from region to region, including those who have earned Day 2 invites, and maybe some of the folks that you might want to keep an eye on as they try to run the Day 1 gauntlet. And then finally, towards the end of the show, this week we will talk about some of the Pokemon as opposed to the players that will likely appear, including some of the expected archetypes and maybe some individual Pokemon that we'd like to touch on. And of course, we will go through some of the fun, more game-type segments near the end of the show.
Yep, like Brendan said, the ladder is a little bit more important around this time of year because the last tournament is usually U.S. Nationals or NAIC, which is generally sometime in early to mid-July, but this year was even earlier. It was late June, last weekend of June. And so there's a month and a half period, even more than that, where there hasn't been any live tournaments. Last week we covered, the Mount Silver and Zelda Challenge, and that's really the only big tournaments we've had since NAIC. And those tournaments sometimes don't really foster creative team building. They're more kind of tournaments use fallback teams on, and so it's kind of fun to look at the ladder now and see, if these ladder trends we're seeing now are people just messing around, or if they're people, actually testing out Worlds ideas that they're going to follow through with this weekend.
And it's as we jump into the ladder here, a little tough to tell in that regard, Jake, because there is kind of some wild stuff that showed up this week. And it is entirely possible that, some of the more standard teams are being hidden. As we talked about during our last episode, people will be hiding. Serious world contenders will absolutely hide when they're playing on alts where they're seriously testing the world's teams. So, all the stuff that rises to the top could just be people messing around, like you said, Jake, or, maybe people that trust in the security of the name, the alt name that they've selected. So anyway, we were able to collect 20 teams within the top 41 this week. So about half of the teams that we were able to make it through are hidden, but we'll start here with number 2. And a trend that we're going to see a lot this week starts off immediately of Rayquaza Lunala teams, and we discussed it a little bit last week, but it is all over the ladder right now, and it has yet to show up in a live tournament as it is in an archetype that's kind of developing as we sit here and talk. So the team here at number 2 on the ladder is Rayquaza, Lunala, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, Stakataka, and Nihilego.
Yeah, Ray Lunala, I think 2 episodes ago is when it first kind of burst onto the ladder. And then it fell off a little bit. We still saw it some in the last episode, but now it's back with a vengeance. Like you said, we'll be seeing a lot of it. And I think this is a pretty solid comp, I think. One thing I've noticed with some Lunala Ray teams is that the Lunala could easily be a Xerneas, and it would be a really solid X-Ray team. And so I feel
I remember you mentioning that last time.
Yeah, I mean, even this team, it's one mon away from the Pato team if you make the Lunala a Xern, and so... I think that kind of supporting core of Incineroar, Fini, Stakataka, Nihilego works with a lot of teams, and it's something that we almost used identically ourselves.
Right, yeah, it does have, the Stakataka and Nihilego, I think I don't know how much we've talked about our team, but that was kind of like the core as far as an anti-Xerneas mode, which we felt was pretty required for running an Yveltal comp.
Yeah.
And I think Rayquaza Lunala, in the same sense, requires a pretty strong anti-Xerneas mode, because it's a restricted pair that can just fall very quickly to a boosted Xerneas. But anyway, we'll talk a lot more about this archetype, as it is something that appears to be pretty important as far as metagame development goes as we head into Worlds. But at number 5 on the ladder this week is one of those kind of rogue-looking teams that we alluded to, featuring Groudon, Mewtwo, Aerodactyl, Tapu Lele, Incineroar, and Stakataka. Aerodactyl.
I mean, it has Tailwind, it has Wide Guard, it has Spread Fake Out. It's a pretty good Pokemon.
Yeah, it just... I mean, Mewtwo, you always have to, in my opinion, justify the use of Mewtwo over Ultra Necrozma, because it seems, almost directly outclassed.
Right.
In a lot of regards. But Mewtwo does have a pretty unique support move pool and gets access to a lot of coverage moves, which is where it kind of differentiates itself. And one other talking point here before we move on to the next one is the article that came out from Play Pokemon that featured a panel of experts. One of the Pokemon that was talked about in the article by Lee Provost was Aerodactyl, Mega Aerodactyl.
Yep.
And when I read the article, I was kind of like, are people really going to be using Aerodactyl? But I think there are 2 or 3 of them that showed up on the ladder this week, so maybe Lee's onto something that we're not. But anyway, the next Rayquaza Lunala team shows up at number 6, and it is somewhat similar to the first one, as it features Incineroar, Stakataka, Tapu Koko, and Amoonguss.
Yeah, I mean, they share Incineroar and Stakataka. Koko takes the place of Fini, and then Amoonguss as the other poison-type Zerncheck. Pretty similar teams. There's not a whole lot to talk about as far as differences between the 2 of them, but again, a kind of a Ray Lunala team that seems to have a defensive backbone with all these Zern answers as well. Definitely.
And at number 7 is the first Ray Ogre of the week, and it is a wild one that we talked a little bit about during our last episode that features Tapu Koko, Incineroar, Shedinja, and Floatzel, who was the original Soak Shedinja partner.
Yeah, I think we covered as much as we can about this kind of team last time. You know, Floatzel really has no purpose other than fast soak on this team, and so if you see the Floatzel, the Shedinja is definitely in the back, if not already next to it.
Right, definitely. And going down to number 8 on this week's ladder was a combination of Rayquaza and Necrozma Duskmane, alongside Tapu Fini, Kartana, Incineroar, and Landorus Therian. And I believe that Necrozma Duskmane, if not by Lee, was brought up by maybe PokeAlex in the Play Pokemon article, and
Right.
for similar reasons that a lot of players have used Solgaleo, in the sense that it kind of checks Rayquaza and Xerneas, which are, you know, basically one of the two of them, if not both, are on every team at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of similar to like the team that won Japan Nationals, in that it has like the Ray, the Steel type restricted partner, and then some of the more defensive support Pokemon like Landorus and Incineroar for double Intimidate. Necrozma Duskmane is an interesting choice over Solgaleo. They both have their merits. They both have the same potential for the Searing Sunray Smash. But Necrozma Duskmane gets Photon Geyser, which is an incredibly good move. Definitely better than like Zen Headbutt, which is Solgaleo's psychic type option, but a little bit slower. It is susceptible to Intimidate. So it's a bit of a trade-off. You get you get to threaten Ultra with Duskmane as well, and you have some unique moves that Solgaleo doesn't get. But I think in general, Solgaleo might be a little more flexible than Duskmane on a team like this.
All right, I think I agree with you, and that's kind of why we did see Rayquaza Solgaleo pop up a couple times on the ladder. But at number 16, as we make a big jump from 8 to 16 here, is none other than PokeAlex on his main, who's running the standard Xerneas Groudon with the Perish Core.
Yep.
That includes Gengar, Incineroar, Landorus T, and Tapu Fini, and we all know what that does.
Yeah.
At number 18 on the ladder this week is a team of Kyogre and Dialga alongside Kangaskhan, Tapu Fini, Amoonguss, and Incineroar. So that's a little bit different, but Dialga, again, in the same sense as Solgaleo, is one of those like counter metamons because of how well it takes on Kyogre.
Yeah, Dialga, I mean, that's the entire reason I ever used Dialga back in 2016 was for the Kyogre matchup. This is Dialga Kyogre is something we saw a little bit back in 2016. I know it won a regional under Wolf's control with the whole Boom Room with Band Explosion Landorus. That was a fun team.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but this is probably this is definitely the first Dialga I've seen in Ultra Series at least. I haven't really seen anyone using it just because there are more reasons not to use it this time around, because there are more options like Lunala or Solgaleo if you want a Steel type.
Right. And it has one of those like kind of intimately meta-dependent Pokemon, just kind of like it was in 2016. So, I mean, you can make your shot at the meta if you really want to try and make a run with Dialga, but if you run into Groudon Xerneas every round, then you would have been better off staying at home.
Right.
But anyway, at number 21 on the ladder is another Rayquaza Lunala that features Incineroar, Stakataka, Tapu Koko, and Tapu Fini. So it looks like these Rayquaza Lunala teams are starting to kind of even out a little bit and just kind of pick from a pool of Pokemon to throw into that last 4 slots.
Yeah, I think a lot of archetypes have become something like that, in that obviously you have the 2 restricteds on any archetype, but then within that archetype a lot of people have been building and playing with these teams, and I think collectively decided that there are probably like 6 or 7 Pokemon that fit in those last 4 slots, and no matter which of those 6 or 7 you pick, it's going to be a solid team. This is like the 3rd Ray Lunala team we've seen, and all 3 of them have had Incineroar, Stakataka, and then one of Koko or Fini, this one just having both instead of something else.
All right, so it trades off, a second fairy type in exchange for a harder Xerneas check in one of those last slots. So maybe it's, Taunt, Koko, Haze, Fini, some way to make up some of the ground that you lose from a poison or steel type. On to number 22 on the ladder this week is another Ray Ogre team that features Togedemaru, Incineroar, Bronzong, and Tapu Koko. So a lot of the same players as far as Rayquaza Kyogre partners go, but I don't think I've ever seen that specific combination of 4.
I'm not sure I have either. It makes sense. Like we just said, Rhaegar is another one of those archetypes that has like a generally accepted pool of partners that you can just kind of pick whatever from, and these all 4 of these somewhat fall in. I'm not sure I'd put Togedemaru there personally, but some people do.
Some people sure do. And at 25 here is a Necrozma, Duskmane, and Xerneas combination that also features Incineroar, Tapu Koko, Aerodactyl, and Hitmontop. And, people have talked about that restricted pairing for quite a while, and it seems like the general consensus is that it misses the mark in a lot of regards, and this is, kind of a bizarre take on it as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't really know what to do if I saw this team on Team Preview. Like, obviously you have, like, Xerneas and Incineroar, and those are about where the synergies end, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems kind of like one of those teams that can fold quickly to Groudon, although there are a couple potential wide guard users there, but I don't know if Groudon is a Pokemon that I would like to take into a tournament with a team with a weakness to into a tournament.
Yeah,
anyway.
And especially these like mixed Groudon that are carrying both Blades and Earth Power, like
that will shamelessly Earth Power you when you try. I did that a couple times. It feels good as the Groudon player. I'm sure it feels bad as the not Groudon player. At number 26 on the ladder this week is another Ray Ogre team that features Gengar, Whimsicott, Tapu Koko, and Incineroar, so pretty standard here.
Moving down to 28, we have our next Kyogre Lunala team. Not next, our first Kyogre Lunala team.
First for this week.
Right, yeah. Featuring Koko, Incineroar, Ferrothorn, and Kangaskhan. So a little bit different than the main Kyogre Lunala team we've seen this year, which is obviously Grams from NAIC. But Ferrothorn, I think this is something we both talked about when we were writing this script up, is that we just really don't like Ferrothorn on this team or any team in general.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I think probably like the Assault Vest variant that was running around earlier was the most palatable Ferrothorn that I've seen, just because, it functions way less passively. But we talked a little bit about this with Tommy last week, but when you run slow Pokemon as opposed to like fast Pokemon, you don't get to set the pace.
Right.
And Ferrothorn is one of those Pokemon that has to sit there and allow 3 Pokemon to act before it really gets to do anything.
Yeah.
And not to say that some of the other slower Steel types aren't like that, but Ferrothorn is like a pure attacker and doesn't get to set Trick Room. It doesn't have something like Wide Guard, so okay, you set up Leech Seed and then what? I've never liked Ferrothorn, and I think that's probably why I don't feel super strongly towards it.
No, that's
all,
a
but
very good
especially
point.
on this team. Yeah.
No, especially when it's direct comparison this year is Stack Attacka. Like obviously
which is way better.
Yeah, the only thing you lose with Stack is the matchup against the Primals, but I think against pretty much everything else you want Stack instead of Ferrothorn just because it does more damage and it offers way more support at the same time, and so it's just and like you said, not being able to set the pace is a pretty big detriment a lot of times.
Right, and it seems like Ferrothorn, and not to harp on this Pokemon too much because I don't like it and I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's like a knee-jerk reaction to wanting both Mungus and a slow Steel type on your team. And you're thinking, okay, I get some roll compression. There's no roll compression, it's just type compression.
Yeah, very good point.
And I don't know, I just it doesn't do any of the things that a Mungus does, and it doesn't do any of the things that you want like Stack Attack or Bronzong for either.
Yeah, well,
okay.
At least we can move on from talking about Ferrothorn. We're going to move on from talking about Ferrothorn and talk about the next team, which definitely also has a Ferrothorn.
It sure does, and it features Rayquaza, Kyogre, Tapu Koko, Incineroar, Ferrothorn, and Nihilego. So, a lot of the same players. I don't think Nihilego shows up too much on Ray-Ogre, but you know why it's there.
Yeah.
The next team is... this is one of those teams we talked about that I just would not want to sit down and face, and it is a Xerneas Lunala team that features Lopunny, Ditto, Amoonguss, and Landorus Therian. That's just terrifying.
Right, I mean, Lopunny taking the place of the King that you would more often see on Xerneas Lunala, but I think we definitely hit on this a lot last week. Lopunny has a lot of support options that you just have to respect, and on a team with Xerneas and Lunala, you would imagine it has Fake Tears. A lot of times they would probably carry Encore to aid the Xerneas setup. This team probably doesn't need After You, so I would imagine that's the option that gets dropped. But
right, but you still have to respect After You, just like on the off chance that it's there and you don't get turn 1 like After You Menacing Moonrise Maelstrom or something like that. It's just like one of those teams where you sit down and you try to make Lopunny remove as many of its moves as you can in game 1, because I feel like I've played best of 3s, not in a live setting, but against players while prepping, where they like lead Lopunny and they reveal and win game 1 by revealing Encore, and then win game 2 by revealing Fake Tears or something like that, right? So it's just like, okay, great, I got best of 1 twice by the same Pokemon. But anyway, the next team at 32 on the ladder this week is a combination of Rayquaza, Yveltal, which is kind of whack, and then is filled out by Metagross, Celesteela, Tapu Fini, and Togedemaru.
This team is like, hey, I have these 2 restricteds that are very, very weak to Xerneas, so let me use 3 Steel types to patch that up.
And it's also like, hey, I have 5 Pokemon that are very, very weak to Tapu Koko. Let me just throw a Togedemaru on there and hope for the best.
Togedemaru is like the
it's
linchpin for 2 separate, completely different matchups.
Right, it's like that that meme with like the leaking water tank where he slaps a piece of tape on it.
And the tape is Togedemaru.
Except with like 4 different really important matchups.
Basically, this team is shaky at best.
I mean, it's cool. I like to see it, but I wouldn't put my bets on that team winning Worlds.
If you just take the second half of it, it looks like a 2017 team.
Celesteela it does a little bit, yeah. Maybe that's the inspiration.
There we go.
At 33 on the ladder is another Rayquaza Lunala. I think we've seen this exact 4 already with Tapu Koko, Incineroar, Stakataka, and Tapu Fini.
Probably, yeah.
Probably the same. And the first Rayquaza Solgaleo of the week shows up at 35 with Mandibuzz, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, and Tapu Koko. And I think we'll talk about this archetype a little bit later in the show, Jake. But Rayquaza Solgaleo, after, it did win Japan Nats, right? And then just absolutely did not show up at the North American International Championships. And at that point, I was ready to write it off as like an archetype that, maybe made a run through a best-of-1 Japan tournament. And probably didn't have any staying power, but it showed up very prominently and was mentioned, I think, by multiple people on the panel that wrote in the Play Pokemon article.
Yeah.
And then I was having, a conversation last night with 1 or 2 other players just to kind of, see what was going on, because they'd been, laddering a lot more than I had. But apparently this archetype is like largely perceived to be pretty legit.
Yeah, I mean, on that article that was released on the Pokemon.com website, they did a power rankings for archetypes.
And it was up there.
Yeah, I mean, the top 3, we'll talk about this article later. The top 3 you would exactly expect, but Rayquaza Solgaleo managed to sneak in at 4, which surprised...
blew me away, honestly.
Yeah, I had no idea that it was even that high up on people's radars. I wouldn't have even put it in my top 11 if you ask me, but
top 11. I think maybe it would have snuck into the top 11 for me. But the fact that it completely jumped, all Yveltal, all what is that Pokemon called? Necrozma stuff. I think it jumped Xerneas Lunala.
It did.
It's just like some of those things that have been format mainstays are being usurped like by consensus by this panel of experts, based on like 1 tournament's worth of results, and the rest is just like like ladder rumors.
Right.
So I guess I was pretty surprised, but it makes sense in theory, right? Is like Rayquaza is a super strong Pokemon. It gets checked by most Xerneas, so you throw Solgaleo in there, and you let you just give Rayquaza more room to operate. Anyway,
we will talk more about these teams later with the power rankings coverage, but we're going to move on to 39, our third to last team, which is King, Torn, Zerndon, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and then we're going to move on to 40, which is Rayquaza, Lunala, Mimikyu, Stakataka, Incineroar, and Amoonguss.
So that's, well, I mean, I guess in the sense that it has Mimikyu is, the most unique Rayquaza, Lunala team that we've seen, but it's basically just, choosing the ghost type Tapu basically for all intents and purposes, right? Maybe a little bit less stats, but
the ghost type Tapu that had like a 300 less base stats.
it covers that with its ability.
There we go.
But yeah, it's just kind of like we've seen some of the things that Mimikyu can do. It can be an alternate Trick Room setter. It gets access to priority, which is something that none of the other Tapus do. With the exception of Quick Attack Koko. There, but it does, kind of have a niche as far as, some of the other fairy types that it could see, but pretty standard as far as Rayquaza Lunala construction. I can't believe we're talking about standard Rayquaza Lunala constructions. But anyway, the last team on the ladder this week is Xerneas Lunala and is accompanied by Kangaskhan, Crobat, Tapu Fini, and Incineroar. So not a whole lot to write home about there.
Yeah, pretty standard fare for XL if you go the King route.
All right, so, in summary here, Jake, and we've kind of been talking about it the entire length of this segment, is that Rayquaza Lunala is like a thing.
Yeah, it is.
I'm still kind of surprised to see it all over the ladder in such a way that, it didn't show up at any other point in the season other than, like, maybe the first week of Ultra where people were like, oh, Lunala was so good in Moon, let me just throw, Mega Rayquaza on there, and they won't do a lot of damage. But I think that the holes kind of become pretty readily apparent the longer you sit there and stare at the combination. So maybe I'm just like totally missing something, but it's kind of like two Pokemon that do a lot of neutral damage, but don't really have any seemingly. It's like neutral matchups all over the board, right?
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know.
so. I can't really think of a bad matchup for one of them that the other patches, because
Right.
like you said, I think a lot of them are, or rather, both of them are very much neutral matchup Pokemon.
Right.
Like Menacing Moonraze Maelstrom does a lot of damage to almost everything. Dragon
Mhm.
Ascent does a lot of damage to almost everything. There's not a whole lot of like explicitly bad matchups for either Pokemon. That you can name like one or two for each, but like I think the point of these teams is just get damage off quickly. I feel it's almost similar to Psy Spam in that I think as soon as it falls on the back foot, like pressure wise, it probably falls apart.
Mhm.
It would tend to err more on the hyper offense side. But I think we're seeing from the support Pokemon, they're more like the type of Pokemon you would imagine on like kind of slower, bulkier teams. So it's kind of this weird like dissonance in my head at least, where you have these two like very offensive restricteds, and then stuff like Incineroar, Stack Attack, Afini accompanying them.
Right. Yeah, no, I think I agree with you, Jake, and I'm like totally open and almost hoping to be proven wrong because I think it's a cool restricted combo,
Right.
right? Lunala and Rayquaza are cool Pokemon. It gives you a break from seeing Xerneas, Groudon, I guess even Kyogre all over the place, and I always think it's neat to see players trying to, and I think the 2016 World Championships was a perfect example of
Right.
that innovate going into a big tournament. As opposed to trying to fall back on some of the stuff that's been successful for the rest of the format. So I guess players are putting themselves pretty far out there, and it seems like I'm sure many of the teams that we mentioned here are alts for strong
Right.
players that are up there trying this kind of bizarre restricted combo.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how it shows up at Worlds.
Yeah, I think the thing is we didn't really notice it on the ladder until after NAIC anyway, so it
Mhm.
hasn't really had a chance to show how it can do at these bigger in-person tournaments since it's
Right.
kind of picked up steam online. And so I'm really interested to see if people decide to bring it to Worlds, because it's not like a proven archetype at all. It's not tried and true. It's not even tried really. And so
Mhm.
it's going to be a bit of a risk to bring something like that to Worlds, but some of the biggest risks can also have the biggest rewards.
I agree. I think that's a pretty good way of putting it, and I would expect it to show up at least in some capacity, unless like a night before. I'm sure there are people planning to bring it right now. I
Right.
guess is what I would say. But how much it shows up in day one, whether it's able to kind of rise above the rest of the day one field would be really telling, because it seems kind of like more of a day one team.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's it for the ladder this week, and we'll touch more on some of the archetypes and teams and Pokemon that did show up a little bit later in our show here, where we spend some time talking in more dedicated segments to various archetypes and Pokemon and stuff like that, not just kind of as it appears on the ladder. But for now, we are going to jump kind of away from our repeating segment and into kind of the more specific Worlds content. And, of course, we are going to jump through archetypes and Pokemon a little bit later. But first, we're going to talk through some of the players to keep an eye out for at the tournament. Of course, this is the tournament where all of the best players in the world, barring those that had trouble getting, travel arrangements or whatever,
Or
are
the ones on
going
this
to-
podcast.
or the one they're working or something like that. But anyway, like this is the big tournament of the year. That kind of goes without saying. So we'll talk about some of the players that are absolutely contenders, some of the players that locked up their day 2 invites and will be able to skip over day 1, and give some of our opinions on who we think is a shot to win it all or make a good run.
Yep.
So we'll kick it off here, Jake, if it's okay with you, with our home region here,
I
NA,
guess.
North America. It's the region that we're most familiar with,
Mhm.
although we have done a pretty good job of keeping up, I think. Good job, Jake. So the day 2s here in NA, and we'll just kind of like run through them here down the list, and we can talk about some of the highlights. Are of course starting from the top. I think these are in order of most CP. Ashton Cox, James Beck, Jeremy Rodriguez, Wolf Glick, Stephen Mia, Nick Navarre, Justin Burns, and Kyle Livinghouse. And I think this hasn't necessarily been true in some of the years past, based on maybe people that have farmed local events or, gotten CP from, lucky runs or stuff like that. But I feel pretty confident in saying that these are probably the best 8 players in NA right now.
Yeah, I mean, all these players have had fantastic seasons. I don't remember exactly what the top 8 was before NAIC, but I think it was like very close to this, if not exactly this.
I think if I remember correctly, Kyle jumped into the last slot.
Yeah, maybe over
shake-up.
Underhill.
I think Paul was sitting in it going into NAIC.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Anyway, like these 8 players have had fantastic years. You know, all of them. We know they've been good for a long time. You have people like Ashton, who's, I believe, the only person to have won 2 international championships, and he did one of those this year in Latin America. You have Wolf, who is the last world champion of the restricted Dex format. You have our NAIC champion from last year, Serapis. You have James Beck, who's had a killer year, winning like 2 or 3 regionals within the past like year and a half.
Yeah, he just like stomped Moon Series.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people on this list that, you know, could easily do well at this tournament, and with their free pass into day 2, they don't have to worry about, you know, trying to get past the grind of day 1.
Right, and I think you know, the skill of these players is kind of undeniable. But what you will kind of be looking towards for a lot of these players is, in my opinion, team choice, right? Because they've all kind of, over the course of the year, had their kind of ebbs and flows as far as, you know, successful portions of their season. And, you know, just to take as an example, Jeremy Rodriguez stockpiled most of his CP in Sun and Moon series.
Yeah.
Of course, when he and Ashton kind of broke open the meta with that Xerneas Lunala stuff in late Sun series and going into Moon series. But he didn't really show up so much in Ultra series.
And
I
he
think
literally
that
didn't show up at the end of Ultra series. He wasn't even at NAIC, and he's still in 3rd place.
Right. So, I mean, that kind of speaks to it. But I think, you know, he definitely was at some events and didn't necessarily do as well as he would have liked. And I think that team choice, you know, is definitely the thing that puts you over the top in a lot of these situations. If you were to take 2 of these players and put them head to head, you know, a lot of them are pretty evenly matched. But, you know, who comes with a team that's more prepared for the metagame, it's better constructed, can definitely have, you know, a big impact. And maybe that goes without saying, but I figured I'd say it anyway.
Yeah, may as well.
May as well. And obviously Wolf, I touched on it a little bit earlier, you know, broke the meta wide open in 2016, where he brought this team that just absolutely nobody was prepared for. You know, I think it's probably the best example almost in VGC history. So that potential is definitely there. And of course, Ashton and Serapis just broke open late Sun series and Moon series, where they accumulated all that CP with, you know, early Xerneas Lunala. Kyle down at number 8 in the CP rankings. Him and his some of his testing buddies were kind of the purveyors of the Kangaskhan Tornadus stuff with Xerneas and Groudon, and of course Como and freaking Mawile were there as well. But, you know, a lot of these players have shown that, you know, they can take some of these things that are successful and innovate enough to give them, you know, a better option to make deep runs through tournaments.
Yeah, one thing I was going to bring up is Kyle and, you know, his tendency to always use this King Torn team, and I can't think of another team he's used at all in Ultra Series, just off the top of my head.
In Ultra Series.
In Ultra, yeah.
I can't.
I mean, yeah, like even if he did, the fact that like we have just strained pretty hard to find one just kind of goes to show how committed he has been to this team. And so I'm interested to see if he and his other friends that have been using this team are going to continue, you know, reiterating this team and finding like the optimal set of 6 Pokemon, or if they're decided to, you know, maybe break away from it and use something else just because people may have started to figure it out by now.
Right. And kind of in a similar mold, Nails is kind of like a combination of a lot of the players that we've talked about as far as series success has gone, where he got most of his points in Sun and Moon series using like the Venusaur stuff with Groudon, Xerneas, and then didn't have so much success in Ultra series. But, you know, the Smogon crew is always a threat to sort of break the meta open, which they did in 2017 with that Raichu, Coco Metaman stuff, right?
Yeah, Cleflax with the last 2.
That made a huge run through day 1 and then kind of before flopping in day 2. But they have a ton of, you know, really strong players and team builders that collaborate on all of their team building. So, you know, he's always a threat to do that as well. I'm trying to think. I think that's all that I wanted to touch on for this top 8.
Yeah. Moving on to some of the other people in America that, you know, have their invites but may not have made day 2. The incomparable Paul Chua, who almost had almost had his Cinderella run to day 2 again this year, but came just short at NAIC. Always a
The
threat.
Chua bomb.
Oh no.
The Chua bomb.
Oh no.
Well, that's what they called the Chua bomb, like because he always snuck into the day 2 race. Like,
Oh,
it's the
I thought
Chua
you
bomb.
meant him bombing.
No,
day two.
like he didn't. No, he didn't bomb. He was fine.
No,
did
on day
fine. He
2,
just
I
didn't
think he
quite
went
make it in.
05, didn't he?
Did he?
Either 05 or 14.
Oh.
It was not his day. Anyway.
Different kind of Chua bomb.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously he's still a threat. He does have to play day 1 this year, but if you had to like pick a few people from day 1 that you would be very surprised not to see in day 2, I think he'd be near the top of that list.
And that's not somebody I want to face on
No.
day 1.
Or
Absolutely
ever.
not. No, that's true. I don't think I've like I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I think I took a Mon off of Paul for the first time in 2018.
That's good.
And he used to come to our locals all the time. Anyway, some of the other folks will kind of run down some of our highlights. Of course, James Evans is one of the people that did receive an automatic invite to the World Championships this year, as he is the reigning senior world champion and had a phenomenal first season in Masters. I think he was top 16 in CP. So definitely, a player that you could say has experience on the world stage, although, obviously a little different from Masters to seniors, but always a threat to make a run through day 1.
Yeah, I mean, he has experience on the world stage, excuse me. We've seen another seniors champion, Carson Confer, last year. I believe he got top 16 at Worlds. Yeah. Well, win an IC, yeah, and then also he got top 16 at Worlds, I believe. And so, these
that's right.
These new Masters have already shown that they're capable of making a splash on the international stage, and so James certainly capable of doing so. Like you said, I think he ended up 12th in the U.S. in CP this year as a first-year master, and so very impressive first year in the division.
Definitely, and another player to watch out for, not walk out on, as we go down this list here, is Ragav Malavia, and we've talked about him a couple times on the podcast here, as he is kind of the leader of the quote-unquote Ryogre Discord, as he's been, responsible for some of the most important meta developments, I would argue, in the Ultra Series because of some of the additions he's made to the Ryogre archetype. And we've seen some of the teams that, he is, at least in part responsible for, and arguably the head of the Ryogre Discord, make big runs. Most recently, John Evans was able to get top 4 at NAIC, and then of course we've seen his team, cut multiple international championships, has shown up in cuts of regionals.
Right.
So those, Ryogre teams are something to watch out for. What comes out of Ragav's latest brainchild, basically.
Yep.
And down to the next person on our list is none other than Aaron Traylor, who, you can't really go without mentioning Aaron as far as a player in a restricted format after he was able to get runner-up at NAIC and then top 8 at Worlds, I believe, in 2016, the last time we had, an Ultra Series-esque format, and was in part responsible for the team that propelled Wolf Glick to an NAIC championship as well, so a player to watch out for sure.
Yep. Ben Grismer, also known as Chef, we've talked about him a little bit on the podcast as well, but becoming a bit of a household name. He's done very well this year with his almost patented, Lopunny, Naganadel, Shardinja, the other annoying S Pokemon, and Tapu Fini, and so definitely someone that may be a bit of like an outside shot, not someone that you would have bet on maybe last year or the year before to do well, but he's having a phenomenal year, and so definitely has potential to make a breakthrough at Worlds as well.
Definitely, and I don't think there are too many teams that can say, although I would definitely say that our team at NAIC was an exception, but not too many teams that you would say you feel confident in your Lopunny Shedinja matchup. So that's one thing to watch out for.
Right.
And you can almost guarantee that he's going to be bringing something very similar with maybe some meta-dependent tweaks.
Yeah.
The next person, as we'd like to point out here, is our good friend Tommy, who was on the podcast last time. And we did talk to him a little bit about, the state of Psy Spam and whether or not he would bring it. And he kind of alluded to the fact that maybe he wouldn't unless he was able to kind of break it open or he felt like the metagame swung in his direction. But, a player with a lot of international experience and big tournament experience. And if he's able to, and he'll say the same exact thing I'm about to say, if he's able to get a team that he thinks is good, he'll make a run.
Yeah, that's a big if, though. I know he's been playing a lot of Fire Emblem, so... Might have to
have most people, I think.
True, yeah. 3 Houses is kind of taking over everyone's life. I have decided to obsess over Odyssey instead, but that's because I like being different.
I'm proud of you, Jake.
Finally, our the last person from NA that we'd like to talk about is the 2016 World's runner-up, Jonathan Evans, bouncing between North America and Europe, but I think he's back in the US for good now. Obviously, he just got top 4 at NAIC as well, so he's found his footing in this format, and knowing that he's had this experience at Worlds as well, definitely capable of making another big run.
Right, and I would argue that John is like one of those players that is one of the best at piloting strong teams that he might not have necessarily had a hand in building.
That's a good point.
And I think we've seen him do that a bunch of times over the years. That the team that he was runner-up with at the Worlds in 2016, I believe, was like a larger collaboration.
I think largely a Gavin team, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep. And then, of course, the team that he took to top 4 at NAIC was the latest team to come out of the Rayogur Discord.
Yeah.
But just like a really strong player that takes like strong teams in the meta and can definitely like optimize them with his play. So definitely somebody to look out for. I'm pretty sure he made the run through day 1 in 2016 as well.
That sounds familiar.
I don't think did he have a day 2?
No, I don't think he did.
I'd have to go back and check. I didn't think so, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Super certain.
Anyway, that's about it for our home region. We're going to move on to Europe now.
And John is a good segue from
good point.
to Europe. It wasn't planned that way, but
since we know a little bit less about the general player population in other regions, we might not be as thorough, but we're certainly going to mention everyone that has their day 2 trips, including the top 16 from Europe, which is headed off by Yuri, Alessio, Yuri, Buscetto. I'm personally going to refer to them as like I know them, and as the public might know them, because I don't necessarily know everyone's full names from other regions.
So I'm in the same boat, so I encourage it.
Yeah, so number 1, Yuri, no big shock there. He's got almost 2,000 CP again. Number 2, Eduardo Cunha, MBC. He won Australian Internats back in, February, something like that.
And then top forward in 2016, too.
Right, yeah. Oh, good point.
Yeah.
He's been a little bit, stayed relatively quiet since then. I don't think he did super well at NAIC. Was he even there? I think he was there. He had to have been there. I don't know. Anyway, number 3 is...
He was.
I think he was too. Yeah, I think I saw him.
I don't think
you
he
don't?
was.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Regardless, number 3 is Pato, who won the European International Championships and got top 8 at ours before getting unceremoniously match lost.
He could have been the second player to win 2 internats, but he didn't really get that shot.
No. 4th is Ethan French, who's a young UK player. 5th, David Carrere from Italy. I'm blanking on his username right now. I know we talked about that. Yes, that's him.
Yep.
6th is a Spanish player that Brendan and I, neither of them had recognized this name, but Ismael Umpierrez, who goes by Canary, I believe. Coming in at 7th is Marco Fiero, the Italian player. 8th is Eric Rios, Rio Pacer, as we know him online. 9th is Fevzi from Germany. 10th is Pokealex, as we mentioned earlier. 11th, Jamie Boyd, everyone's favorite crackhead, Bridget. 12th is Oliver Eskelin, O from Finland. 13th is Giappi, Michele Gavelli. We love him. 14th is Radium from France. His name is Alexander. Neither of us knew that. We only knew him by Radium.
Right. I don't know that this is necessarily the next top 8. I think these are just some names that I threw up there.
I'm looking at the leaderboard.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Carry on.
15th is David Kutesh. We all know him from the Czech Republic. And then 16th is Riccardo Appamea from Italy.
Right. So obviously a lot of strong players, and we'll kind of touch on some of the big ones. I'm going to jump back up to the day 2, Jake, if that's all right with you. And we'll start at the top. I think if you were to try and bet money on any one player to win Worlds, Yuri might be, in the top, 3 players that you might pick. Just like one of the best players over the past, 3 seasons. Unbelievable consistency. He cuts like every international tournament that he goes to, and it just is constantly in top 16, if not top 8 of like all the international championships. So just like an unbelievably consistent player with like a wide variety of teams. And I think he had been using like Eveltal stuff this season.
I'm pretty sure he used Spam at NAIC.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You're right. And he was using Eveltal in 2016.
Right. Yeah.
Right, and had used it a little bit in Moon Series. So definitely, if he was to take, Yveltal into top cut somewhere, I would definitely be on board with that. And I would like to see that.
Right.
Unless it's that Rayquaza Yveltal team that we talked about earlier, please leave that at home. But like Yveltal Groudon, kind of a strong restricted combination that he's had affinity for in the past. So, and obviously a threat to win any tournament that he shows up to.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Edu, of course, has kind of, made his mark in restricted formats. And, he's been, successful in all of the past couple seasons. He's consistently one of the best players in Europe. But I remember him most for his exploits in restricted formats, of course, winning the OC International Championship this year, and then getting top 4 in what was, kind of his coming out party in live tournaments in 2016. He was a well-known name in the online community, but kind of his first event where he just made, if you didn't follow the scene, an unprecedented run to top 4. Before I think he ran into, did he play Wolf?
No, he lost to John.
No, he played John, right? Yeah. Pato, we touched on briefly, already has one international championship under his belt when he kind of teched Nihilego onto that common Ray Xerneas 5, and that kind of ended up being, the go-to version of the team for a couple months before
that was
it
like
sort
the
of fell
X-ray team for a while.
Right, it was, yeah. And, that Nihilego at the time I thought was just like a super cool innovation with the Rocky MC. It wasn't something that anybody had really, prepped for, and was doing a lot of damage to a lot of different things. And I don't know, it was a cool team. And he's another one of these European players that has had, kind of a ridiculous run of consistency over a couple of seasons. But he's back and obviously will be a threat to win the tournament as well.
Yep.
Ethan French, I believe, is kind of making his name this season, because I think I was talking to Jamie in like a Discord at some point, and I was like, "Oh, who's Porygon Z VGC?" And Jamie was like, "What? You don't know who this is?" And I was like, "Sorry, I'm not British, Jamie." God, like.
Yeah, no, I couldn't really tell you any individual tournaments he's done well at, but clearly he's 4th in CP in Europe, so he's been doing something right this year. I want to say he's in earlier master as well, like 1st or 2nd year, but I could be completely off base there too.
That sounds right. I'm not going to try and call you on it. And then at 5th, I believe, is Davide Carrere, and I think we've all learned better than to try and count Italians out of any international championship at this or international tournament at this point. I think you could argue that maybe after the United States and I guess Japan is up there, you could argue that Italy has been over the past couple seasons one of the strongest countries as far as players go. And he is obviously one of the best Italians and best players in Europe. And I think that and I've thought about this a lot sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, that it really speaks to the strength of the country when it's making itself so prominently known in a region that has so many different countries, right?
Right.
It's kind of like saying it's like the equivalent of saying Ohio is the best state in the U.S., which I'm not claiming. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
But it's similar in that sense.
I think Italy has kind of taken the baton from Germany in that sense because 3 or 4 years ago, Germany was always. I think Germany was definitely considered one of the best countries in Europe back in 2015, 2016.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. But then a lot of the players kind of, started doing other things, like Marcus Statter and
Marcus and Billa and Deflo and Luca, and so a lot of them
all those guys
playing less frequently or not at all. Billa has taken up the baton as a judge as well, and so he's still around, but not really in a playing capacity. But back then, you'd be seeing 5, 6, 7 Germans in the top 16 getting those day 2 trips, but this year we actually have 6 Italians out of 16 making day 2 invites, and so Italy definitely cementing its reputation as one of the best countries in Europe, if not the world.
Totally agree with you. And we're going to keep on moving down our list here, and of course Ismail Canary we touched briefly on is somebody who did really well in a lot of more local events and didn't have, I think you said he had no international finishes, Jake?
Not. He had about half as much CP from ICs as he did from regionals.
Interesting. Okay, so that's something to note that we talked a little bit about over the show, international experience, and that's maybe a player that doesn't have so much as some of these other guys that have been along for a long time. Marco Fierro, another Italian player, And, we can kind of say some of the same things that we just talked about with Davide, is just like some of these Italian players are just, it's kind of like they just like beat up on each other and get stronger as a result. And it's kind of like a whole crop of really strong Italian players. And then at number 8 is Eric Rios, who goes, I remember his
Rio
name from
Pacer.
way back. And
Yeah.
And I think he used to run some of like that, like he came up as like one of those meme team users before he was really good and decided to maybe start using good teams. And he's, a super consistent player in EU as well.
Just kind of jumping around through the second half of the top 16 here. Are some of the names that you'll recognize from, days of old, like PokeAlex and Jamie Boyd. Those are two of the most popular players in Europe. Both of them have a pretty large online presence as well. And so, both of them managing to sneak into a Day 2 invite once again this year. To no one's surprise, really. Like, at any tournament they go to, they're favorites to win it, I would say.
Absolutely. Definitely. They're two of the best players in the world, and I don't think there's really any doubt. And it's always fun to see what Boyd breaks out. Back in 2016, I believe he took Cottony to Worlds.
That was a regional. It wasn't Worlds.
What was his? Oh, it was X-Ray was the Worlds team. He had, was that the Gyarados one?
I thought Dane was Gyarados.
It was some dumpster Exodia.
Him and Baz both had like peak dumpster
was that the
Exodia.
Volcarona stuff?
I think Baz had Volcarona. Jamie, I know Jamie had like really fat AVIC Wind Ray. And I'm forgetting
so that was a little ahead of its time. I forget what else they had, but anyway, he was like you said, peak dumpster Exodia, and he's used Mega Alakazam extensively in online tournaments this year. So you just never know really what he's going to break out.
He brought it to NAIC too, and it's just online.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. It was he was on stream, right? And he got dumpstered by Chef.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
That was tough. You hate to see it. Speaking of more Italians here, we'll talk about some of these other guys. Michelle, I don't know how to pronounce it. Michele?
Yeah, probably.
Joppi online. Lord Giappino is, again, another one of this like incredibly strong crop of Italian players, and that kind of goes for, guys like Ultramat, who are also up there, Luca Lucario, Desu, I can't remember his real name. I wrote down
Nico
Desu,
David Carrera, I believe.
That's right. Yep.
Or no, I'm combining two names.
No, that's Narimbo. Okay. Well, Desu.
Yeah, something like that.
Here's your shout out. I don't remember what your real name is.
Oh boy.
I thought I had written it down somewhere. And then of course Arash Ahmadi, who is a world champion from 2013 and also recently won the Zelda Challenge and has won regionals, and has he won a national? Does he have the trifecta?
He won Germany in 2016.
That's right. So yeah, one of the best players of all time, of course, and that kind of goes without saying.
Yep.
And then, of course, Jono TV, somebody who was an online player for a long time, Jonathan Marston, who has started to attend a little bit more lives this year and has kind of, become a household name.
Fortunately, I think he finished 17th, so he just barely missed that trip. But
just outside the top, but a very good player. And then you mentioned Kutesh briefly, and he kind of is the Blaziken Bisharp player to me. I don't, that's how I remember him. So anyway, that's going to wrap up EU as we jump down into LATAM, and we're getting into regions that we know less and less about as we go on here. So we'll just kind of touch on some of the Day 2 folks without being able to speak too knowledgeably on what is bubbling beneath the surface. And in LATAM here, their Day 2 players are Rene VGC, Rene Alvarenga, John Paul Lopez Buiza, who's fresh off a cut of NAIC. Dorian Andre Canonez, who has a pretty good run of consistency and was actually at my locals for a little while. I think he was staying with somebody that was around. It was kind of interesting. Gabriel Agati, who I believe is a Brazilian player and is world class. Javier Valdez, who was able to get into the... there was a competition for the 8th spot, and he was able to earn it and actually shoot himself up higher than 8th, I believe.
Yeah, I think he came in 5th at the end of the day.
Right. IR Nemesis. I played him at the tournament. It was wild. Anyway, Paul Ruiz, who of course is our reigning world champion, and obviously somebody to look out for there. Juan Pablo Nar, and then Juan Andres Samayoa, who are two players that I don't know so much about, but obviously they were able to get into... Oh, one of those, that's Don VGC is Juan Pablo Nar. That's right. He's been around forever.
Yeah, I mean, there are some very recognizable names here. Rene's been around for a long time. He has like 3 million CP. So clearly does well in most tournaments he attends. I'm sure he's swept some of the locals around I believe he's from El Salvador, so like I bet he travels around Central America to some like specials.
I think
and
you
stuff.
have to, yeah, to get that many CP,
Right.
In LATAM, where it's tough to go from country to country sometimes, and they don't necessarily have events that are near you. So an incredibly strong pool of players there. I think that a lot of people would agree that the region as a whole is kind of more top heavy.
Right.
And in the sense that like this top 8 that we just talked about are as strong as potentially as strong as any of the other regions, but there's not so much bubbling under the surface. You'll see some names, like Peffin, Mr. Penguin, guys like that are in the top 16. But other than that, not necessarily a lot of names that you have heard of. But LATAM has a history of kind of running Cinderellas through tournaments.
Yeah, I mean,
so that, like John Paul Lopez, just recently at NAIC,
huge top 4 finish at NAIC. One thing that I picked up on here though is that a lot of people have stayed consistently at the top of LATAM. I think like Juan Nar, Don VGC. Of the years that we've had paid trips, I believe he's only, or rather, the years we've had day 2 invites, I believe that he's only had one Worlds where he hasn't made day 2, like out of like an automatic day 2, and that year he made day 2 through day 1. And so like he's 4 for 5 out of getting an auto day 2 and 5 for 5 in making day 2, which is crazy consistent.
He's been around forever.
Yeah, and I like obviously Paul Ruiz, our defending world champion. He got top 4 in 2017, first last year, so clearly a favorite to do well again this year. Javier has been doing very well recently. He just got top 16 at NAIC. He was running a wacky team that threw a lot of people off, you included, and so.
He just absolutely dumpstered.
Yeah, so it'll be really cool to see what he whips out for Worlds. And someone like Dorian Quinones, who I believe has also cut Worlds before. I think he got top 8 in 2017. He's one of the many Latin American players to make it that far. And so there's a lot of talent in LATAM that people may just not know because they may not interact with the community as a whole globally as much as somewhere like Europe or North America would.
Right, and they also have a history of kind of like locally developing metas as well, which is like not shocking, but the fact that they're kind of like they seem to be a little bit more removed as like a community at large as far as the internet goes, so you don't necessarily get tapped in as much to like what their meta developments are. I think that was a good example of that was Paul making his run to the 2018 World Championship where he just kind of like whipped out a Gastrodon and everybody was like what? So definitely, don't sleep on LATAM, I guess is what we're trying to say here.
The alarm clock has been going off for a year now. I think it's time to finally
wake up, people. Wake up, people.
All right, moving on to the 4th and final region, Oceania. Our day 2 invites from that region are Melvin, unsurprisingly, who has cut every single event this year. Graham Amity, who just got second at NAIC. Megan Rattle, Chris Can, who won NAIC in 2017. James Katsaros, who is possibly most famous for fighting with Yihue on Twitter. Ismat Myron Beg, Matthias Long, and Kevin. That's Nim.
I think maybe it's Yim
or
something like that.
I believe the 3 of those last players are all from Southeast Asia, with the first 4 being from Australia with the exception of Melvin.
Right. And I personally think that, I mentioned this with Yuri. If I had to bet money on somebody winning this tournament, it would be Melvin.
Maybe not winning because he cuts consistently and then doesn't win.
No, he's gonna win.
Is he gonna? This is his time. Okay, I'm with you. I want him to. I love Melvin. He's such a nice guy.
He's been running the same exact team the entire season.
I would bet,
and he still cuts money every tournament.
I would bet so much money on him using those 6 at Worlds. Like if you put a gun to my head and said pick a person and a team that they'll be using at Worlds, I would easily say, Melvin and his team. Like, he's just so incredibly consistent.
You guess the exact 6.
Yeah, he's crazy good. I think he's cut like 5 or 6 international championships now, which has to be the most of anyone.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to be.
Right? I can't think of anyone else.
It's just like unbelievable run of international success. And of course, Graham was kind of I don't want to say a lesser known player because I think he was relatively well known in the online community, but made a pretty huge run that maybe wasn't so much expected.
Right.
To second at the North America International Championships with that wild team that had the Metacham and the Lele and the Lunala and stuff like that. And I think if you were, um, maybe not watching the stream or weren't watching the games, and you just kind of like looked at the results, you'd be like, oh wow, Graham made the run. But I feel like he was definitely looking legit at a lot of times in some of those games he was playing online. I was there. We were both there at the tournament and watching those games on stream live, and he was just making like huge reads, and it was really exciting to watch.
Super fun.
Some of them were a little ill-advised, but it was still really cool.
And he gave the best
he was just like
stream
playing
interview
well.
of all time because
I'm
gonna do it.
Okay.
He likes killing stuff. I laughed so hard when he said that. I can't.
He's
and
awesome.
I spent the rest of the
He's
weekend
super cool.
saying that. It's so funny.
Yeah, one of those guys that you like to come represent.
Yeah, and he's like a super energetic, like infectiously happy person too. So it's so fun to be around and fun to see you succeed.
Right, and we will stop fanboying here. We're going to jump down the rest of the list here. Chris Kahn, of course, maybe until this year would have been probably who I would have, if you'd asked me, who's the best Australian player. After watching his run in NAIC, and Jake, I think you played him.
Yeah,
right,
don't remind me.
NAIC in 2017. Sorry, but he just looked like incredibly dominant during that tournament. Even when he had to play against Paul Chua, and he had like, for all intents and purposes, the plot armor was against him. He was going to get hacked out by Paul Chua in NA, and he overcame it and still won that tournament. There have been times where he just kind of like looks untouchable.
Yeah. I haven't really heard much from him this year as far as results go. Like,
he's got some cuts.
Obviously he's fourth in the region, so he has to have done well, but
I think he cut a couple, like at least 2 or 3 of the Australian or OC regionals. I don't know what his international runs
were
like,
so less of like a huge year than he had in 2017, but obviously still at the top of his game.
Mm-hmm. And then James, I think, had a similar season in the sense that he was cutting a lot of the local majors and maybe not so much of the international success, and of course had a several month-long Twitter feud with Kiwi, which was nice to check in on every couple of days. Ismat Myron, I think that's his online handle as well. I don't know so much about, but he is in the top 8 of what is at least a pretty top-heavy region. There are some strong players up there that he managed to get into the top there. Matthias Long is a player who I believe made one international run. And he's one of those guys
he
that
cut
Joseph
Oceania,
is always talking about. Yeah. I don't know why, but I equate him with the Tornadus Moon Series team, and I couldn't tell you why that is.
I know he's friends with like Joseph and
I
Kyle, who are the King Torn people.
Right. And then Kevin Yim is my best shot. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a good player. He's got almost 1,000 CP, I think, but I don't know who that is.
I'd be lying if I said I had seen his name before, so sorry, Kevin, but
sorry, Kevin.
Good luck at Worlds.
Good luck. I'll be rooting for you.
Obviously, another like notable Australian player that we all know is Sam Pandelis, who got second back at the 2017 World Championships, and I believe top 16 at 2016 Worlds. And so doesn't have a D2 invite this year, but will be at Worlds, and will be looking to return to Top Cut.
Right, and there are also a bunch of some of the Australian players that have kind of come onto the scene recently, like Henry Rich Hobbit, who was one of the guys that was playing Zygarde Solgaleo. Obviously Dog, who got runner-up, Luke Curtale.
Curtali. It's Italian.
Sorry. I don't know if he's
I don't believe he is.
You don't think he is?
Sad.
Okay. And I think that's all the people. Oh, and Mogar was the other guy who is like the purveyor of
Coco Chew,
Chew. Yeah, like, you can have it. But yeah, anyway, another one of the regions kind of like LATAM in the sense that it is kind of top heavy, and like I said, like Melvin would be my, like, if I was asked to put money on one player to win the tournament, I would
definitely
go with Melvin, I think.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for us as far as the player preview goes.
Yeah, we don't know anything about
Japan and Korea.
Sorry. I'm sure there are other outlets that will have, some features on both Japan and Korea. I could tell you that I think Seijin has an invite.
I don't know.
That's I think he does. I'm pretty sure.
I know he's going. He'll be there for sure. I'm not sure if he's playing.
Does he have an invite?
I truly don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, we don't know that much. don't, kind of partake so much in a lot of the online forums that Jake and I find ourselves in, so it's a little tougher to keep tabs on. It's entirely possible that some of these teams that we've been reading off every week are Japanese teams, so let's use that as our contribution to the Japan portion of the metagame discussion. Boom.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick little break and come back to talk more about archetypes and Pokemon that we might expect to do well at Worlds.
Welcome back, our loyal listeners, from this will likely amount to a 5 to 6 second pause. We just finished going through a lot of the players with a focus on all the regions that we felt like we could at least knowledgeably talk about, and of course a very important run through this week's ladder, as we were able to provide at least 20 teams. And now we're going to jump into something, it's just kind of like a little bit more of a structured discussion about some archetypes that are going to show up, some Pokemon that we hope are going to show up, and of course the Panel of Experts Play Pokemon article that was just released a couple days ago. So we've got a little bit more content for you guys. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we get to talk about some of the different Pokemon we think might do well, think might not do well, some of the different archetypes on top of that as well. So some fun stuff to talk about. Obviously, this is all speculation considering Worlds is this weekend, and this is all kind of a prediction type podcast where we think we try to decide what we think might have the best performance at Worlds, and then next week, hopefully, we will do a recap where we can talk about all the reasons we were right.
And yeah, please keep in mind that everything we say on this podcast is law.
Yeah.
Is law. We are infallible. We speak only truths. Okay, so anyway, we'll jump through some of the archetypes here. I think that's probably kind of the best way to, break down the meta as best we can, is kind of tag some of the archetypes that are, I guess, most prominent, or maybe, big risers or recent fallers. And of course, the article that we'll touch on in just a minute did highlight some of them, but I think any restricted archetype has to kind of start and end with Xerneas Groudon, as far as I'm concerned. And it's an undeniably strong archetype, but maybe one that doesn't, maybe is not necessarily, cool and popular right now, like some of this Solgaleo stuff and, New Age Rayquaza archetypes. But it's something that, has been consistent throughout the season and dating all the way back to the first restricted format that did feature Xerneas and Primal Groudon, where it kind of left its mark. But, since at least a couple months ago, there hasn't really been, I don't think, a whole lot of development in this archetype. Kind of the most recent development was Kangtorn, and before that there was like the Perish mode, and then we go all the way back to that like the standard, quote unquote standard version that had like Feeny, Incin, Amoonguss, and Salamence. But the only really like development to this archetype that I've seen personally is that like Coco is on it a little bit more, and that's kind of it.
Right, and I think if you compare like current Zerndon to 2016 Zerndon, there's still like way more variance now than there was in 2016, because in 2016 there was like one slot you could change as opposed to like 4. Because like back in 2016 Zerndon was just so dominant, and it took Wolf like pretty much hard counter taming it. I don't know if there's anyone that could beat Wolf with Zerndon and his Worlds team. And so like obviously he cracked that code, and it took until Worlds for someone to do that, but nowadays Zerndon is still up at the top, like debatably 1 or 2 as far as like the best archetype goes. But it's even if it is number 1, it's much closer to the rest of the field now than it was back in 2016.
Yeah, and I think kind of in that sense, it's even it's kind of weird to say this, but I feel like at this point in the meta, it might even be like getting slept on a little bit.
Yeah.
For some of the stuff that's a little bit more popular, like all these like new Rayquaza things with Solgaleo and Lunala, like new versions of X-Ray. Rayogre is still kind of the same, but Zerndon, like, I don't know exactly why, but it seems almost like the development of the archetype kind of stalled a little bit. And I think that could have something to do with the fact that Rayogre has been kind of like a little bit more prevalent from top to bottom of this format as opposed to 2016, and that's kind of like the natural, archetypical check to Zerndon. But even on the ladder, we haven't really seen a whole lot of changes. So, if anything, if people are able to successfully innovate that archetype over the last couple of weeks going into Worlds, I feel like that would just be like an unbelievable like impact on the Worlds metagame as a whole.
I certainly agree. Like you said, there hasn't really been much of a change in the Zerndon archetype since like the inception of King Torn, which happened sometime this spring. I know people were using it in like springtime regionals, and so it wasn't just an NAIC thing. That is where it has showed up the most recently, but there's certainly room for like changes to pretty much every slot on that team.
There has to be, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Like, there's no way you can solve a team like 6 months into a format,
right?
And I don't think any of the variations have quote unquote solved it. The ability to solve an archetype or a format is something that's debatable too, but like I absolutely agree that we could see some type of new Zerndon archetype, new type of Zerndon team pop up at Worlds, and I think if someone is able to take Zerndon, improve what might be its worst matchups, then I think it's certainly capable of making a very, very deep run.
Definitely agree, and I feel like in a lot of respects, Ray Ogre, which is the next one we're going to jump down to, is kind of in a similar boat in the sense that I think you could pretty safely say that Xerneas Groudon and Ray Ogre are like the two power archetypes of this format. And in a similar sense, I think if it weren't for like kind of the Rogov team, that it's also an archetype that seems to have been stalling a little bit, and it's kind of been just kind of like driven forward by a singular force, and there hasn't really been a whole lot of other innovation going on other than what's coming out of the quote-unquote Ray Ogre Discord.
I mean, even if you include like the Rogov squad and their Ray Ogre teams, it's kind of similar to Zerndon in that there have been like 3 major iterations of it throughout the format.
Right.
That's
true. That's a good way. Yeah, they're just kind of like every time the new team comes out, and that's
right.
Like for a couple weeks.
Yeah, the main ones I can think of are like the Madison version, where like the Whimsicott stack version, and then obviously the NAIC version that John used to get top 4 with Mimikyu Metagross, and then obviously Wolf and Aaron's Ray Ogre team was different, and I would imagine they were built entirely separately. I don't think those two groups of people talk to each other as far as team building goes, and so there has been those are the 3 main Ray Ogre teams I can think of now, and obviously there have been plenty more. Like Chemo top 8'd Berlin with Ray Ogre with a different squad, and so there, not to say those are the only 3, whereas Zerndon those have pretty much been the only 3, but like I think every time we talk about Ray Ogre, especially on like the ladder segments in this podcast, we kind of always say like there's a Ray, there's an Ogre, and then there's like 4 of 8 that you just pick from, and then it's a good team.
Right.
And so
it seems kind of like the most successful variants of it have been the variants that break from that mold, right?
Right.
Is when Whimsicott got thrown on there, and it wasn't seen a whole lot at that point in the meta, and then Mimikyu got thrown on there, and then Metagross was on that iteration as well, and then Celesteela found its way on there, and these are all Pokemon with high base stat totals. They're known for the roles that they fill, and then we're able to kind of like be fit onto the team. It's not like people are pulling so like what we need is I don't know like Lanoon on the team. It's like real Pokemon that find their way
Pokemon,
on. And that's like the kind of like the kind of innovation that I think Zerndon is still looking for, and Ray Ogre has gotten maybe a healthier infusion of. But in the same sense as Zerndon, this is definitely an archetype that, like you said, is not solved, and definitely, in my opinion, can make waves. Just like in 2016, if somebody's able to, catch the meta, or catch lightning in a bottle, and really plan out the world's meta.
One thing I think is interesting is that we've been relating Ray Ogre and Zerndon to their 2016 counterparts, and for the most part, we've said, oh yeah, they're pretty similar. Whereas we're moving on to X-Ray. And X-Ray used to be like the epitome of, oh my god, what is this team I'm looking at? And now it's become like a very like tame. I guess tame is a fine word. Like it's a standard archetype now. You don't see X-Ray and think, oh, what are they thinking? You see X-Ray and think, oh, okay, X-Ray. Like, especially because like there was one X-Ray team that we mentioned earlier, the Pato team, that became like a very, very popular team, and that team is very solid, like both offensively and defensively. It's not going to like throw all these random surprises at you and win because it caught you off guard, but you're also not going to be able to like pick it apart in one turn. Like it has very, very solid options, and so it's funny to like look back on X-Ray from 2016 when Pokemon like Arcanine and Volcarona were like two Pokemon that like top cut worlds with it. Yeah, it used to be like a crackhead team, and now it's like, oh, I mean, this is like a generally accepted, like, yes, this is standard and normal and okay.
And we've seen that I think I would say that it's also, as an archetype, had like somewhat more measured development. We talked about Zerndon, Rayogre kind of like developing in like steps as opposed to, you know, like more of like a gradual diagonal line, if you can visualize that as I say it. We saw, you know, Pato was kind of like the archetype's first kind of foray into international success with the Feeny, and the Nihilego was, you know, at that time a pretty big adaptation, and then kind of like the successor to it was the John Paul Buiza team that got top 8 that kind of featured Coco and Amoonguss, which was kind of, you know, like I don't want to say like a logical modernization of the team, but like it definitely makes sense. And I think in a way Coco checks a lot of the things that it has trouble with much better than something passive like Tapu Fini does. Yeah,
Coco and Fini, they kind of fill similar roles in that they're both like a fairy type and they both have a terrain.
Just like different approaches to the same slot.
Yeah, exactly. They're both kind of checks to Rayogre in a sense. Like Fini is a defensive check to Ogre, whereas Coco is a much more offensive check to Ogre. They can both deal pretty good damage to Ray, but Coco is faster and does that damage more quickly. And so it kind of depends on how you want to play that slot. If you're looking for a much more offensive answer to those Pokemon, then Coco is definitely your option. But if you don't really need the offense and you want to play more of a slow style of a game, then Fini is definitely your Pokemon.
Right, and then on the complete flip side of the archetype, we do have people that continue to run it out there and really embody the Dumpster Exodia spirit of the archetype as it was known in 2016. And I think IR Nemesis, Javier Valdez, is really kind of the best example of that, with a team that he's run for a couple months that, you know, showed up most prominently at NAIC, that featured, you know, like 3 attacks Gastrodon, that I think at some point was Expert Belt, you know, stuff like that. There was Amanda Buzz,
Surf Rayquaza,
Bullet Punch Metagross, Surf Rayquaza, Scarf Zer. So it's like stuff like that you know, and like you're not going to see anybody besides Javier running that team, but it's still alive and well. And you know, in its soul, X-Ray, the restricted combo really lends itself to stuff like that, especially meme water types.
Right. That's another thing too. Like, I think this is also something we've talked about before, but the whole meme water type concept has kind of become obsolete because Tapu Fini's a Pokemon now.
Damn it, Tapu Fini.
Tapu Fini is just so incredibly good, like on X-Ray and in general, because all the things that it does as a support Pokemon, X-Ray loves. And it also can, you know, run a water type move like Scald or Muddy Water if you need something to answer your Groudon or answer opposing Groudons. And so, like, if you're running X-Ray and you want a water type to cheese Groudons, you may as well just run the best one, which is Fini. Whereas in 2016, there really wasn't one like clear contender.
That's definitely true. And it's too bad because I feel like in you know, like removing Tapu Fini from existence, stuff like Araquanid could have been like like really slotted. I don't know, but that's besides the point. We're just speculating at this point. Moving on, the next thing, and we've talked about it a lot, like multiple weeks because of how much it keeps showing up on the ladder. But Lunala Rayquaza, like, is it? I feel like at this point you kind of have to say that it's got to be the X factor going into this tournament, right? Because it's something that's just like sitting beneath the surface. It's all over online ladders, but has literally no success in live events yet. Literally none. Like, I don't think the restricted combo has been in an international like top 32.
I don't think so either. And for full transparency, our notes on Lunar Ray are just a bunch of question marks on our script because like we don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, it's tough to say, and it seems kind of like, you know, when we were first started to see it pop up, there was, I think we mentioned that, you know, is this the spiritual successor to X-Ray? Or people just gonna like throw meme mons on there to try and like fulfill roles because it's such like an incomplete restricted combination. But people have started to kind of hone in on, you know, stack attack Incineroar, you know, choose a Tapu, and then maybe you have a little bit of flexibility with one slot. Maybe throw 2 Tapus on there, maybe get your Nihilego in there. but it's kind of like sorted to narrow down in the sense that there seems to be, based purely on ladder results, like a true development of the archetype going into Worlds.
Right, and I would love as a spectator to see these like random Pokemon you wouldn't expect on this team, just because I think it adds like kind of a surprise factor, and also just like a genuine like, oh, this is a new shiny toy kind of value to the team. And so if I'm not seeing Haze Weezing on Lunaray to beat Xerneas on my couch this weekend, I'll be sorely disappointed in all of you Lunaray players.
Maybe we have to wait for its Galarian form.
I'm obsessed. Don't get me started. Do not get me started. I will talk forever.
All right. So Lunaray, probably like even the X factor by definition here. It's too bad there's no Xerneas on it, then I could really call it that. Anyway, Xerneas Lunala, an archetype that seems to have steeply fallen off after people were like, okay, Lele Lucario is as good as this gets, so we may as well just give it up here.
Yeah, XL kind of crashed and burned. Like, it was super popular in the first two series. It had some pretty good regionals results, even without like the Lele Lucario version. But that Lele Lucario like super hyper offense version of XL is definitely the most prominent in Ultra Series so far. We did see it win Senior NAIC. Kevin Swastik, our friend K-Swas, was the best XL player in Masters, and he deviated from that mold, but we haven't really seen anything pick up after that. And so it's a bit unfortunate. It's a fun archetype to play, and it's really not it's not one that feels oppressive to play against either. It's one of those that you can enjoy, you can thoroughly enjoy like a game that has XL in it, whether you're playing with it or against it. And so I don't really have a good reason as to why it kind of dropped off, because I don't really see like Xerneas or Lunala losing any stock individually.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of bizarre in that sense, and it's certainly possible. I was talking to one player who said he was like he'd been like legitimately labbing the archetype for like a couple of weeks because he felt like really strongly about the restricted combination, but it's tough to compress rolls onto 4 Pokemon for everything that Xerneas Lunala needs, because it's like a strong offensive combination,
right?
But that also leaves it kind of deficient defensively, where you're liable to opposing Zern sweeps. Groudon is not necessarily easily dealt with when you're relying on an MMM as your like way to knock it out. So there are a lot of roles to fill, I guess, and it's like the game plans are not as straightforward, and it's always been like this, even going back to Sun and Moon series, where like it's necessarily flowcharty in certain matchups.
Right. And as you were saying that, I kind of realized part of why it may have fallen off in Ultra Series is that I think a lot of XL's answers in Moon Series, at least, to some of the common Pokemon was that MMM. Like especially something like Groudon. Groudon had to be incredibly bulky to survive an MMM, but now that Primal Groudon is around,
it's natural bulk, yeah.
Right, so it's going to take less from MMM naturally, and you can. I think that even like less bulky Groudon can survive it. Like with a few EVs or with a good roll or something. And so I guess the value of MMM dropping inherently drops XL's value, because you don't get that free KO anymore. You have to worry about some things surviving and some things needing chip damage.
Right, and then like AV Ray eats it.
Right.
Primal Kyogre doesn't really care so much.
Yeah.
So there's like all this stuff. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good way of thinking about it. But anyway, it's like kind of interesting that it seems almost like this archetype, like, based on where it is right now, and obviously we could see some, development of it going into Worlds, but like it was almost solved like around this time last year. Right. Like when the format was first announced, this like Lucario was one of the first kind of like things to show up on XL, and it's come full circle a couple times. But
I still don't understand why Lucario is so good on that team. Like I admit that it is good, because I've used that team and like accidentally got like 30 CP with it in an IC online or something. I don't remember. I don't even care. I was like studying for this massive exam, and whenever I needed a break, I would like play a game or two. and I just kept winning. And I was like, well, oh well.
There you go. It's a good ladder team, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Lucario is like honestly a really good on that team because it gives you like an alternate follow me, and it also just gives you a way to blow holes and like Groudon with close combat, or like you can just knock out other
chip
Xerneas.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's weirdly good.
It always blows me away how much damage Meteor Mash does to Tapu Fini.
Yeah, it's like 60 or 70.
Yeah, it's so much. Anyway, near and dear to our heart is Yveltal that hasn't been on the ladder at all.
No.
It's like, it doesn't seem to be present.
No.
Even it didn't, like have a super good showing at NAIC, and like, everybody knows the pitfalls of Yveltal, right? When you play in a restricted format and you're launched alongside Xerneas, and then the next generation are 4 fairy type, restricted, or
right.
Like the Tapus. That's what I'm alluding to. I didn't get it out there, but it like you're a dark type, so all these things, we know what's bad about it, and then we know that it has great, like obviously like an unlosable matchup against Lunala. It has pretty good matchup against Rayquaza. Like if you're able to intimidate Rayquaza, it does fine. And then obviously, what it was known for in 2016 is that it has a strongly positive matchup against Primals. So we know what it is. And for whatever reason, Yveltal just like, I think on the one hand, players haven't devoted a ton of time to it, and that for whatever reason, I don't know, like I feel like it should be more present than it is.
I agree. I think a lot of the people that were using Yveltal back in 2016 have since abandoned it. And,
or even in Moon Series, people have abandoned it.
True, yeah. I was going to say Gavin was one of the biggest
That
Yveltal
team like
users.
solved the format, yeah.
Yeah, no, that Gavin team in Moon Series was a very strong team, and I really haven't seen any of I haven't really seen the successor to that team. I guess ours was like similar-ish, but not in. Yeah, no, not really.
Yeah, I don't know. Was Venusaur that critical to the team that
I
there
hope
was
not.
no other way to like replicate it in further format? But anyway, I feel like it's probably good, right? And there's a recipe. You have to have a way to beat Xerneas.
Right, as any team does.
Right, and I think that I don't know. I feel this way, that you have to at least be comfortable bringing a 4 where Yveltal stays on the bench. And I think there are some teams where like you necessarily need to leave Yveltal behind, and that's kind of a weird thing for a restricted. It can make you think about leaving it behind, but I think that like the matchup that it's strong in, like it does really well against Kyogre. You can bring it into any Lunala team, including XL, and it is really strong into any Lunala team. Obviously, it has positive matchups against Solgaleo, if that's a real thing, or like Psy Spam. It's like borderline unlosable. So it has all these good matchups that I guess players don't feel strong enough about using it into its bad matchups, that it's continued to kind of like fall by the wayside.
Well, that mindset I think is something people don't take advantage of enough, because that was the entire mindset behind Sunny D. Not to like harp on it, because this conversation has run its course many times in many arenas, but the whole point of Sunny D was that we just didn't bring the Dialga to the Big Six mirror, because essentially Sunny D was basically Big Six, but the Dialga took the Xerneas slot. That's like a gross oversimplification, but like in very like surface level theory, that's kind of how it worked. And so like we used the Dialga for specific matchups, and it stomped those matchups. Like Dialga is a stupid good Pokemon in like a Kyogre matchup, but we were completely fine leaving it behind. And I think a lot of the teams nowadays are so bent on always bringing both restricteds to every game that kind of, not to say like restricts team building, because like these Pokemon have like 800,000 base stats. You want to be bringing them anyway. But if you have to leave one behind, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when you can feel comfortable about matchups that might require that when you're team building.
No, I totally agree with you. I think you put it pretty well. I'm like not super gung-ho about the Sunny D metaphor, but
hey,
that's fine.
When you entered into this business venture with me, you knew I'd bring that up at least once. That's
fair, and I've heard it from Tommy. It's funny that you said in many arenas. I've like talked to Tommy about it multiple times. One time was like in a car. One time was in a hotel room. Talking about
every single group chat I'm in that's related to Pokemon has had that conversation.
Right. And speaking of Tommy, we'll touch briefly on Psy Spam here, because honestly, at this point, I would be surprised if it started to show up.
Right. I mean, you heard it from the horse's mouth 2 weeks ago that Tommy himself wasn't very confident anymore, and so I think that's an archetype that would almost require a complete overhaul to see any play at Worlds, which is certainly possible. You know, Tommy mentioned looking into that himself, but obviously we don't know what he's going to use yet. And if we did, we wouldn't tell you.
But he was also very specific about how he was not going to completely overhaul it.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was basically just like, I don't know, maybe something can be there instead of Salments, but everything else kind of has to stay.
Right,
So
that's true.
it seems kind of like, at least from this perspective, maybe a fresh set of eyes could, you know, rejuvenate the archetype a little bit. And like, you know, Tommy's done it before where he falls back. He fell back on Ducks at like 3 or 4 different tournaments where he was like, I'm not going to bring it, I'm not going to bring it, I'm not going to bring it. So it could still just be like, you know, Tommy runs really hot at this tournament. And like just like shoots through into day 2, and we'll see it, but you know, who knows? It's kind of one of those rogue archetypes, and Tommy said it himself. Like it's super powerful, right? Like you don't want to sit down and play against it, but also it doesn't seem to be favored in team building right now.
Yeah. Moving on to something we've talked about a good amount is Zern Ogre, and specifically like the inclusion of Tornadus on Zern Ogre, which was certainly a thing back in the first 2 series of this format, Sun and Moon. We haven't really seen much of it, but we did see James Beck kind of bring it back to a top 16 finish in AIC this year.
Yeah, and I think like Tornadus has always been like kind of an ogre partner, and then Tornadus was a Kangaskhan partner, and then it was kind of like, wait a minute, what if we put Kangaskhan and Tornadus and Kyogre all together on the same team?
Right.
and you know, obviously it's doing well enough that it showed up in, you know, the Play Pokemon article as I think the number 5 ranked archetype, as it was able to leap all these other things like Yveltal and Psyspam and
XL,
you know,
and
all these other things that it just kind of like jumped over onto the leaderboards. And you know, a lot of teams did that admittedly in that article, just kind of surprising to see. But you know, it was a team that kind of like really burst onto the stage at Worlds in 2016 as well, and then, you know, borderline dominated the post-Worlds meta. So it's not so much, I guess, that it's surprising that it's showing up now as much as like, where was it the rest of Ultra Series?
Yeah, I mean, Zern Ogre was always kind of a late bloomer in 2016, and I think that's kind of the same now. If you look at like the proportion of time left in Ultra Series as opposed to like 2016 in Worlds, it probably burst onto the scene around the same like percentage of the way through the format. That just happened to be before Worlds this time because Ultra's a little bit shorter.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah,
I think that it's definitely, if I had to build a team for Worlds right now, obviously I don't have an invite, I'm not playing, I'm not even going, but if I was the one building a team to use on day 1, I'd probably be bringing Zern Ogre because I just like it, I enjoy playing it, but 2, I really do think that it has potential to do very well, and I enjoy using things that haven't been like used before. Not in that I have to use like a new team every time, but I enjoy kind of breaking through with new ideas as opposed to like rehashing old ones, and so that's certainly something I would be spending my time on if I was building teams right now.
All right, and I'm pretty sure that there are players that are spending their time.
Oh, absolutely,
so
yeah.
Hopefully we'll see that show up in day 1 because I think it's strong, and obviously you and I are partial to it. And any, you know, Kangtorn team, like I just feel like I need some Kangtorn eye bleach to like erase the Como and the Mawile from my mind.
I think if Kangtorn is sitting next to an Ogre and not a Como, I think I can stomach it.
I'd feel better about it. I would feel better about it. Like, not overwhelmingly positive, but better at least.
Right.
And then lastly here, we're going to touch on, and honestly, this was like a late addition to our quote-unquote script that we have as we're kind of going through our podcast here, is the 2 Psychic Steel restricteds, Solgaleo and Necrozma Duskmane. This was like definitely not something that was on my radar, and I'm not gonna, you know, speak for you, Jake.
Yeah, I'll speak for me.
Okay, by all means. But it did, like, it's where did they rank it? 3 in this article or something?
No, I got
like
it was 4.
Oh, it's 4.
Yeah.
Rayquaza and Solgaleo, and like it's entirely possible that Solgaleo is restricted to a Rayquaza partner at this point because it needs to be, you know, like have certain levels of synergy to make it worth bringing. And then I think even Lee mentions in the article Necrozma Duskmane and Rayquaza, and like I guess they do the same thing that they've always done, right? They're like kind of a counter meta thing. At some point in the format, like you could use Solgaleo and take on, you know, the common core of Xerneas, Amoonguss, Incineroar, Kartana, like by itself. right? And it still does that same thing. It takes on like it has a good matchup against Rayquaza, good matchup against Xerneas, good matchup against stuff like Salamence, and obviously Clear Bot, or what is it called, Full Metal Body is phenomenal. But also it has all these weird like pitfalls, and like we've seen on stream before, like it lose a straight up match to Xerneas because it takes equals to. So like it's like a weird polarizing Pokemon that won Japan Nationals, didn't show up at NAIC, and now all of a sudden is like garnering all this respect from like the online community.
Solgaleo is weird to me because it has some like
weird,
very strong matchups, but also has some like incredibly impossible matchups. Like Solgaleo sees Groudon and just runs away. It really can't touch Groudon at all unless you're running like...
Did you know that it can't even knock it out with Tectonic Rage?
I did, actually. Like, I was looking into that. It was like a few weeks before NAIC. I was like, I might try Solgaleo again. And I was seeing if that would dent it, and it would do like 75 or something crazy like that.
It's like without investment.
Right, yeah. So it's just like... The way that people have found a way to make it work is a little bit impressive to me because it's just so negative against a lot of common things. Like Kyogre too. Like you can run Wild Charge, I guess, but then you're running like Wild Charge for one Pokemon and then it's a worthless slot. And so I don't know. Anything that resists Steel I feel like has just such an incredible matchup against Solgaleo that it's really hard to use in my opinion. But I do think Rayquaza is probably like the necessary partner for it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And we messed around with the Yveltal.
Right.
But I feel like I think you're right in the sense that it has to be Rayquaza, and specifically Earth Power Rayquaza.
Yeah, definitely. Because Rayquaza is one of the best restricteds against Groudon, and it can heavily chunk Kyogre if not just knock it out. And so, I do think that Ray is a pretty solid partner for Solgaleo, because Solgaleo also takes care of Xerneas for Ray, and so there is synergy both ways there too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, it kind of makes sense at the most basic level, but I think if you're just, like, if you take Solgaleo in a vacuum and you just kind of look at some of its matchups, it's like, I don't know, I don't think I could justify it to myself.
Right.
Is one of those, like, I wouldn't feel safe trying to bring Solgaleo, and I feel like that's opting into a game of matchup roulette, and it's already hard enough in this format where if you want to, like, I guess have, and this, I'm going to try and paraphrase Tommy a little bit here, but when you're like selecting a team, right, would you really want to opt into the chance that you have to play a 40-60 matchup for a whole bunch of 55-45 matchups? I guess depending on how common it is. Maybe that wasn't a great way of phrasing it, but
no, I know what you meant. Yeah,
it would be like a Pokemon that I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing, and I felt kind of like it's one of those Pokemon that has kind of like an interesting skill cap, because I forget who it was who I was talking to, and it was like Sun Series or Moon Series back when it was a Pokemon that was worth using, and they were like, oh yeah, like part of my game plan against this team is to like superpower Groudon for 35% and then like knock it out with something in the back, and I was like, what? So it's like kind of weird to have restricted Pokemon be a part of a kamikaze game plan, like,
right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, weird Pokemon. We're gonna move on unless you have other things to say about it. Obviously, like, players can by all means whip out all these bizarre, like, there are how many restricted Pokemon. If somebody finally thinks that Lugia is the call, or like all this other stuff, but I think we've touched on basically anything that you could reasonably expect to see.
Yeah. We keep mentioning this Power Rankings article, and I think we should move on to talking about that. And before we just completely drop Solgaleo Rayquaza, what do you think about its inclusion? Well, one, about its inclusion in general, and two, about it being 4 as opposed to like the last on the list.
Well, I don't know. I think it's kind of in the same boat as Zernogre, which was the 5th on the list, in that it's like it's a rising thing that is garnering respect from some phenomenal players. Like obviously Justin Burns is very tapped into the international meta.
Yeah.
Alex Gomez is very tapped into the international meta. Lee does a lot of research. So there are all these phenomenal players. Aaron Traylor, and Gabby does a lot of research. So this is not just kind of like we polled Twitter, and Twitter really likes Solgaleo, yeah. Right? These are like people that know what they're talking about and feel strongly enough to rank Rayquaza Solgaleo over all these other teams that have had real results. And obviously Japan Nationals, like I think there are two sides of the Japan Nationals coin where people are like, oh, it's a best of one tournament. All you have to do is get into top cut and pull a couple good matchups and this, that, and the other thing. And the other side of the coin is like some of the best players in the world are in Japan, and you still have to make a run through top cut. And we've seen, you know, like repeatable success from some of the players in Japan that have showed up in top cut, in the sense that like the fact that this team did win Japan Nationals is not a fluke by any means, right? So that's kind of like where the entirety of the respect for the archetype comes from at this point, though. It wasn't at NAIC at all, and then all of a sudden it's at 4. Like, it's tough. There are two sides of the coin, and I feel like I lean towards the I don't think it's real. And I definitely wouldn't have considered ranking it above like Xerneas Lunala at this stage in the format.
Right.
But
well, that's the next thing. Like if you were
but I
to,
think you can understand why. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you were to like, for in theory, move Zernogre up to 4 and put something else at 5, what would the 5 be? Because there's a lot of different things that we've talked
it has
about.
To be XL, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Like that's the only other archetype that's really had much of an impact. I guess in Ultra Series, but its Ultra Series impact has still been kind of muted, so I guess I understand why it wouldn't be included.
Yeah, I guess it's not like it's a surprising omission to have XL off the list and these two things jump in, but maybe not like egregious.
Right. The other half of this article is that, you know, the top 3 are pretty indisputable at this point, I think. Like,
yeah, I think that's hard I think it's like there's a clear top 2.
Yeah.
I think you could make an argument for Zerndon even over Rayogre at this
I
point.
agree.
X-Ray is like a pretty clear 3, and then it's kind of a crapshoot from like 4 through 6 or 7.
No, I definitely agree. I think personally I'd still put Zerndon at 1, but I do understand that Rayogre did just win in AIC, and that
100% agree. Yeah.
And I think it's, of the two, I think it's the most flexible, as opposed, like in terms of things you can do with it. It's like Xerneas Groudon, there's a pretty clear win con in setting up Geomancy, and so obviously you're going to have partners that will facilitate that. But Rayogre, like even the Ray set is super variable. Kyogre has a couple neat options, and then like after that you can kind of go wherever from it, whereas Zerndon has partners that really likes having. And so like putting it at number 1 is justifiable in my opinion. Probably not what I would have done, but certainly a reasonable choice. And then I
think I agree with you.
Yeah. And like you said, X-Ray I think is the very obvious 3 here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think you could debate 4 through, like I said, 7 and like forever and ever. But it's fine, and I think it was like, I'm not angry obviously at the way that the rankings turned out, but more it was just
I'm
kind of
personally offended.
Intriguing that like all of a sudden
I
was like, okay, like I guess we'll talk about Solgaleo then,
because it really did feel out of the blue. Like I saw the article and I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, what?
Yeah, because like my whole impression of the archetype before we move on here was, oh wow, it won Japan Nats. It's like now I have to prepare for this going into NAIC, and then it wasn't there, and I was like, oh okay, that's it then.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's over.
All right, and we're going to kind of run through some other points that we just want to talk about briefly from this article. Is that I don't remember who, I think it's Aaron, mentions like something called like unbreakables or untouchables or something like that, and kind of alludes to the combination of an Amoonguss, Incineroar, Tapu Koko core. And I kind of talked about this very briefly as we were talking about X-Ray earlier, where this was the core that was very heavily relied on for John Paul Lopez's team, the X-Ray team. And that it's kind of like a modern core, and Koko wasn't seen so much in Sun Series early on, and has really kind of like come on lately, and specifically like thrust itself into like the slot on most Tapu Fini, like the Tapu Fini slot on most teams.
Right, I think it was the Unstoppables, is what he mentioned.
Something like the Uncrustables.
The Uncrustables. I need a team named that right now. No, I agree though. Like Tapu Koko, I think people are realizing that it's not just like a one-dimensional clicking of all havoc on turn 1 Pokemon, and that it really does have like really unique options as an offensive Pokemon. Like even if you still are running an offensive set, you can run stuff like Taunt or Electro Web or Skydrop or something like that, and all of these moves have a lot of utility no matter what archetype you throw it on. And so I agree that like Koko can find its way into like the traditional Fini slot on some teams, and if you do that, that kind of changes the like makeup of the whole team and lets you go in a completely different direction. And so, not to say that Fini is not worth using by any means. I think it's one of the best Pokemon in the format, but certainly not like a given as it used to be.
Right, and of course Incineroar kind of like its natural partner at this point,
Right.
going all the way back to after it got intimidated in 2017, and even going all like 3 years later, you can still just lead Incineroar Koko into like a lot of teams and have a lot of really safe options. So it makes sense there. And as far as Amoonguss goes, even in like a similar vein to Koko, it seemed like Amoonguss like even fell off for
A
parts
little
of
bit,
Ultra
yeah.
Series, which was like kind of bizarre. And then we're going into Worlds now, and it's kind of like, oh right, it's like arguably the best VGC Pokemon ever.
You will never convince me
should-
that Amoonguss
we
is
should-
bad.
We
like,
should probably start to put this back onto
yeah.
teams.
Amoonguss is one of the best Pokemon in any format it's legal in, and you will never change my mind.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not going to try to. I agree with
it's
you.
crazy good. And I think that it has a really good place on a lot of teams in this format just because it can offer so much, like, without really forcing you to give up anything else.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. It's just like a fail-safe slot.
Yeah.
A fallback Xerneas check. Good Pokemon, and now starting to like kind of get its due again. Going on through our points here on the article, Duskmane and Necrozma was something that Lee, I think, mentioned at a couple points in the article, maybe just one point in the article, but kind of one of those Pokemon that, you know, even since Sun Series is kind of like better in theory.
Yeah, I think when you're using Duskmane and Necrozma as Duskmane specifically and not as like a precursor to Ultra, I think you really have to consider why you would use it over Solgaleo, because
Stack Attacka.
well, yeah, that too. But like even if you want that to be restricted, even like just the dichotomy between Solgaleo and Duskmane, I feel like Solgaleo gives you more just because Full Metal Body is ridiculous. Solgaleo's faster. It has Wide Guard, which I don't believe Duskmane. No, Duskmane does get that, doesn't it?
No, I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't. No, you're right.
No,
it doesn't.
No.
And so like, and Solgaleo even has like a more varied move set if you want to run like
Right,
coverage moves.
Superpower as opposed to Brick Break.
Yeah, like Superpower, Wild Charge, Flare Blitz if you're nasty. Like,
Right.
I think that Duskmane is fine, but not better than Solgaleo for the most part. Like,
Right, and I think you're totally right that you have to like justify the differences and where it comes in, and if you want to
right.
like utilize like a hard Trick Room mode with Solganium Z and like set up Trick Room and then, you know, be threatening from there, I think maybe that's like at least some sort of a niche. Or if you have some like you need to take like, I don't know, like an Earth Power from Groudon or something like that,
Yeah.
as part of a very specific game plan, and like I think maybe you try to find a new game plan at that point, but if that's like, you know, what it comes down to, maybe
Right.
that's your niche.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think
I've
it
seen
is.
People
It's
use
like-
weakness policy or something wacky like that, but
I don't know. I think it's slightly bulkier and it does have Prism Armor, and so those are two like.
What did I say? Shadow Shield?
I don't think you said.
Oh.
I don't know, but
I definitely didn't say Prism Armor. That's why I was like, oh crap.
yeah. Anyway, to me it just feels like it's generally not worth using Duskmane over Solgaleo, unless you're using
Right, and I think
Ultra,
we've kind of seen
obviously.
its best use was like there was like that team that was early on. I know people use it in MPA a lot, where it was like Ultra Necrozma, but there were games where you would just let it be Duskmane Necrozma because of like its, you know, defensive typing and its ability to like threaten Xerneas and stuff like that. I feel like that's probably the optimal use of it.
Probably, yeah.
It has to be, right?
You would think.
Anyway, another Lee-ism that we wanted to touch briefly on was his pitching of Mega Aerodactyl, which I thought was really surprising.
Yeah.
Because it showed up like a couple times on ladder, which made me feel kind of dumb for like dissing it immediately. But it's another one of those Pokemon where we know exactly what it is, and we know exactly why it has continued to not be used. Like,
right.
It's one of those Pokemon that, you know, will set Tailwind, and then you choose like, I don't know, like your attack of choice. What does it use? Stone Edge? Or you use Rock Slide.
Rock Slide,
I guess. And then you have two other move sets to, you know, like try. Do you want to use Ice Fang? Do you want to use something like Aerial Ace if you're trying to hit a Moongus? And then that leaves you with, I don't know, like 1.5 slots to use for Taunt and Wide Guard and what else does it get? Like Stealth. I'm kidding.
Stealth Rock.
But it just, and then it just has like no defensive stats.
Right. And I think like looking at what Lee said, he mentioned its high speed, which obviously is very good. It's Mega Aerodactyl specifically is faster than almost everything in the format. And he mentions Skydrop, which is fine. Like Skydrop is a really good setup aid, and so like completely understandable why that would be suggested. Tailwind, obviously good, and then like Taunt and Wide Guard are moves that Aerodactyl has used in the past, and so kind of what you might expect. And the only thing that he mentioned that is like a bit of a new thing for I think that people wouldn't expect to see in Aerodactyl is Whirlwind, and I think that like generally that would be an okay option if you're using Mega Aerodactyl, because I feel like for the most part it's kind of Zern setup bait. Like if you have your Zern out against Aerodactyl, even if you might expect taunt, like for the most part you probably don't lose anything if you geo into a taunt again if you're facing down Aerodactyl. And so
right,
if you can bait the geo and whirlwind them out, okay, that's cool, you got something out of it. You can whirlwind away Trick Room, I guess it's more reliable than taunt because you can like whirlwind through Rental Orb or something like that, or like Z Trick Room. But for the most part I was very surprised to see Aerodactyl, and I don't really agree with it, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think like you talked about it a little bit, is that like some of the game plans, it's kind of like when people were using like Haze Feeny or something like that, right? Where you're like, oh nice, I caught a Geomancy, or you just get Moonblasted and like nothing happens, and it's like in the same scenario where, oh nice, you can try and taunt it, but you got Moonblasted and now you've lost 80% of your health.
Yeah.
Or you like tried to Whirlwind and you got Moonblasted and now all you did was like bring in an Intimidate from your opponent's side of the field. So it's like one of those things where I don't think like we know the pros, right? We know it has like it's an incredible toolkit Pokemon with all of these like tech moves, but is it worth your Mega slot when you could be using something like Salamence, which also sets Tailwind, or Kangaskhan, which offers Fake Out Pressure? And like to me, the answer is no. It's not worth it. But maybe Lee knows something that we don't, and it was obviously on the ladder a couple times. So who knows? Maybe it'll show up. It's a cool Pokemon. I think the design is neat.
Yeah.
It seems kind of unlikely with the addition of all those rocks that Aerodactyl would remain aerodynamically viable.
Oh my god.
But like I don't know. It's cool. I'd be happy about seeing it. So anyway, that was a little bit longer than we wanted to talk about the article, but I think they raised some good points, so it's cool that we got to talk about it. And we are going to kind of close out with our one game here of the day.
Yeah.
Since we don't have a guest, so we tried to pump the brakes on the games a little bit. We've also talked for quite a bit, so we'll play one more fun little segment here, and we're going to call it, for the purposes of Worlds here, Contender Pretender. So we've kind of compiled a list of Pokemon here that we're expecting to be relevant at Worlds, or at least, you know, be a relevant part of the leading up to Worlds discussion. So we'll kind of run down this list, and then Jake and I will call out whether or not we feel these Pokemon that we'll read off are contenders, as like are they good? Are they going to show up strongly at Worlds, or are they pretenders and we're not expecting them to see them, you know, feature prominently?
The first section is what I like to call the Xerneas check section.
It's a good section.
I wrote down 6 Pokemon that generally serve as Xerneas checks, and so we are going to call out whether they are contenders or pretenders, and I miscounted. There are actually 7. I can do math. The first one is Stakataka.
To me, that's definitely a contender.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my favorite steel type to use.
I agree.
And I would probably use it even over some of the restricted steel types.
No, I agree. I have nothing else to add there, really. Number 2 is Ferrothorn.
Big time pretender. We've talked about it a million times.
Bye, get out. Number 3, Celesteela.
So this one, I feel like I'm a little bit closer to the fence on. I think it's a cool Rayquaza partner.
I agree.
I think that's like kind of where it ends. And
I love that. I really
Aaron's
love that
team.
Celesteela plus Ogre is like a checkmate against Groudon. I think that's
true,
a strong positive. Like given that you're wide guard, but I think that's a really good like reason to use Celesteela. But if you're not running wide guard, I don't really agree with Celesteela.
Yeah, I think I agree. That there's not really a reason to be running, you know, Leech Seed necessarily in this kind of format. Although you could run, I don't know, like Heavy Slam, Leech Seed, Wide Guard, Protect. But it has like I would say contender. I'd say contender.
I'd say like slight contender.
Sure, not as overwhelmingly positive as Stakataka.
Right. We just talked about this one a little bit, but Amoonguss is number 4.
Big time contender.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if that was on a World's winning team.
No, me neither. I can't really say more than I already have about Amoonguss, but definitely contender. 5 is Nihilego.
Oh, see, this is a tricky one.
Yeah.
Because it has a niche, right? and like I loved it on the team that we brought to NAIC,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that this is a Pokemon that I would expect to see in Top Cut of Worlds.
I definitely agree. I loved using it. I think it's a good Pokemon, but I also don't think teams that I'm just reading us right now. I don't think teams that rely on Nihilego for their Zern matchup and in a Worlds meta are going to be a good call. It's like,
Right, I think it's nice to complement your bulky steel type as like
Yeah.
part of the Zern matchup, so you can like pinch it. But if this is a meta that is going to end up featuring stuff like Solgaleo and
Mhm.
Lunala more than the NAIC meta did, then it's especially unkind to it.
yeah. Poor Nihilego.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, we are calling Jamie Boyd out directly with this one, but it is Salazzle.
Pretender.
Big pretender. No, like, it's funny. Jamie has been on this crusade since the beginning of this format that Salazzle is better than Incineroar. And I think I agree with him more than the average
False.
person would, but I also don't think he's right.
I am the average person and disagree with him.
Yeah. I still
think
don't think he's right, but I see what he's saying. And like
Right.
specifically as a Xerneas check, I guess technically it's better than Incineroar, but like for everything else.
Sure, but
Everything else.
it quad resists it. I would freaking hope so.
Right. All right, finally number 7 is Solgaleo.
I feel like we've alluded to this, but I think it's a pretender.
I do too.
I think I would be like I understand what it does, and it's a super cool Pokemon, and
Mhm.
I would be very excited to see it show up. But I'm gonna say pretender. I
Yeah.
don't think it's gonna end up placing very highly.
I agree.
Good, and now we'll move away from the Xerneas checks into our last couple of Pokemon. And the first one here, we've talked about it like every week on this podcast, is Tornadus.
I'm going to say contender for sure. I keep saying, I think it's a really good Zernoga partner. And I think if some people are dumb enough to keep running King Torn, Como, Zerndon, then there might be one or two that do okay with it. And so, I don't know. I think Torn itself is surprisingly good on the right
Mhm.
kind of team.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think it remains to be seen what kind of teams it actually does show up on. I
Mhm.
think there'll be people that will be running Xerneas Groudon Kangtorn with some Pokemon in the last 2 slots, but I'd be most excited to see it placing highly on Zernogre,
Yeah.
which I think is its home sweet home. Okay, next, I think this is kind of an obvious one, but Rayquaza.
Contender for sure.
Big time contender.
Yeah. No, Rayquaza cemented itself as like one
With
of the
any
best.
number of restricted partners.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's so incredibly flexible. Like, I can think of 4, maybe 5 off the top of my head that it's like objectively good with, and so, like, it's so flexible. It's flexible in team comp and it's flexible in the sets it runs itself, and
Definitely.
it has such strong matchups against a lot of things that I think it certainly will do very well at Worlds.
Definitely. I think I agree with you, and we've talked about it extensively, but just an unbelievable Pokemon.
Yeah.
Definitely an odds-on bet to win
Yeah.
with the World Championship. All right, next one. Shedinja.
I'm gonna say Pretender asterisk, with the asterisk being Melvin K is winning Worlds.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. I was like, oh my god, Jake, Pretender. Like, what are you doing to Melvin here? I think I agree with you. I think that Chef has had a really good run with it,
Mhm.
but I think Melvin's just kind of like been on a different level with his international play this year.
Yeah, I mean, at this
so-
point, we get it. It's
Yeah.
Shedinja. We know what happens. It
Yeah.
like top 4 one regional, and then Melvin did his thing, and like
Yep.
Chef has done his thing to a like less successful extent than Melvin, but like that's literally it.
Yep.
And
I-
people
yeah.
understand how to play against it now. And unless you're Melvin K, the Shedinja master, you're probably not going to do well with it at Worlds.
Pretender asterisk, I agree. And last Pokemon for this segment here, Jake, we talked about it somewhat extensively already.
Right.
But Aerodactyl, Mega or not?
Yeah, I think the item choice doesn't really change my answer. I definitely think it's a Pretender here.
Pretender, Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
for the
I said,
reasons
it
that
has
we've
some
talked
really
about.
cool options, but I just don't think they're worthwhile. I don't think the things it does makes up for its just like bad stats and typing.
Yep. No, I agree with you. Agree.
Well, that was 2 hours of fun.
Oh, gee, it sure was. All right, so I think we've got our last segment here of the week, which is something that we're trying to feature every week.
Yes.
And I'm trying to like not sure if I even prepared this for this week, but of course it is our music recommendations, and Jake does appear to be ready to go.
I am.
So I'm gonna let you go first while I search through my recently played songs and figure out what I'm.
Brendan, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's true.
My music recommendation of the week is a band called Half Alive. They released some like singles a few months ago, and I found them on YouTube like, by complete chance, just as like a recommended follow-up to a different song I was listening to. And their first album finally dropped within the last week. It is called Now Not Yet, and it's very good. I am listening to it on repeat. I'm probably going to go see them next month in Houston when they come, and I'm very excited because I've been looking forward to more music from them for a while, and it's finally here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you turned me on to them a couple months ago, and I was listening to that a little bit.
I'm sure I like sent you Still Feel when I first listened to it.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, two things to talk about as far as music for me this week. Taylor Swift is dropping a new single on Friday. That is the title track of her album, so that's something to look forward to for everybody that is a fan of revolutionary figures and also pop music.
Lover, right?
Yeah, the title track. Yep. And for my music this week, since I, didn't think of anything super new or exciting, I'm gonna fall back on my favorite band of all time is Yellowcard, and everybody knows them as the band that sings Ocean Avenue, but their best album, in my opinion, is I'm freaking blanking on it. Southern Air. Southern Air is one of the lesser-known albums, but my favorite that has some of the best songs on it by far.
Well, hopefully my co-host will be more prepared next time, because I feel like I carried this segment today.
You did. Big time. Although, that said, you did forget to mention that Taylor Swift does have a track coming out on Friday, so...
Well, no, I knew you would, so I left it to you.
You know.
Anyway, thanks for sticking around. We'll take a quick break and be right back to wrap up this episode.
And welcome back, and again, I think I said this at the beginning of the last part here, but thanks for sticking with us. We had an awful lot of content for you guys this week, and we were really excited to bring all this content because it is Worlds, and this is kind of the episode that we've kind of been leading up to. We launched the podcast immediately after NAIC with the knowledge that we were going to be aiming at Worlds for a big content-heavy episode. And we kind of made it through a couple weeks of the desert here with very little as far as results and stuff go. But here we are, and hopefully you guys enjoy all the content that we're bringing you. And yeah, thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, this was definitely our longest episode to date, and probably one of our longest that we will have for the next while, because there's just so much to talk about leading into Worlds. There's so many people going, there's so many Pokemon that could show up, and so we just wanted to make sure we covered everything, at least on a surface level. And if you made it this far, massive thank you for sticking around.
Right, and of course this is our pre-Worlds episode. We will also be launching a post-Worlds episode, so we're kind of breaking up our 2-week cycle here to make sure that we're on top of the content and the goings-on in the Pokemon world, and then of course we will go back to our 2-week cycle as we go into the post-Worlds meta, and then hopefully in a couple months into the Sword Shield meta. Yeah, so it'll be pretty excited. Please continue to stay tuned. We will be up on all sorts of different platforms. You can find us on Twitter at SoundproofCast. And, of course, you can find Jake and I both on Twitter. I think those are in our Soundproof Cast bio. So please feel free to hit us with your feedback. Good, bad, ugly. If you want to tell us we have terrible music taste, you want to tell Jake he's ugly, any of these things. Please, we're happy to get your feedback on Twitter.
Yep. Thanks again for listening, and we will see y'all next week for a Worlds recap.
Have fun at Worlds, everybody.
Yay! Have fun without us. Enjoy it. Bye.